Very well. We resume the debate in second reading of the draft finance 2017 budget. Jersey law, we had reached Article 17, I think. Minister.
We have indeed, sir. Sir, Article 17 removes the exemption from paying parish rates currently enjoyed by the states in respect of certain property of the states. Article 17 also removes the parish's exemption from paying island-wide rate in respect of certain parochial property. So I would just add that clearly the first part that I mentioned, the removing of the states paying parish rates, was indeed a matter that was approved as an amendment to the state's strategic plan, which was brought by the Conotaba St Helier, supported by this Assembly overwhelmingly by 36 to 6. And I hope that, therefore, members will continue to support Article 17. Thank you, sir.
Is Article 17 seconded? Yes, sir. Does any member wish to speak on Article 17? The Conotaba?
Sir, yes, sir, I wish to oppose this article also, sir. It is simply a proposition that the state should pay rates, perhaps. A sound principle, a good principle. But I suggest, sir, that to do it without a funding proposal and without a sound rationale is dangerous. And I do not think, sir, that requiring the parishes to also pay rates has ever been discussed. And I would think that, too, is irrational. So the logic that the Minister claims for the states to pay rates is that the state should understand the true cost of ownership of property. Now that is a good plan and a good principle. But then, sir, he totally negates this by exempting the states, according to his report, from the island-wide rate, something like half the cost of the rates. So how is that understanding the true cost of ownership? It is, in fact, understanding only half the cost of ownership, which is indeed no understanding at all. So in the budget report, the Minister shows more of his lack of understanding of the rate system when he says, and I quote, "This change will particularly benefit the parish of St Helier, which will receive approximately £600,000 per year from the states in parish rates. The parishes of St Saviour, St Ballard and St Clement will also materially benefit from this proposal." And then, sir, it is hoped that this extra revenue will be used to enhance public facilities in the parishes. That, sir, shows a total misunderstanding of the real situation. That is absolute nonsense. There will be no extra revenue. Each parish will fix its own budget as now, and the rate will be fixed. The income for the parishes will be exactly the same, and the charges distributed among all ratepayers, some of whom might see a modest decrease because of the states making a contribution. But there will be no extra revenue unless each parish decides to increase its budget. But even the ratepayers who might see a modest decrease, they won't actually, because parish estimates will need to increase to meet the liability that this decision will place on them for island-wide rate on parish properties. The Minister tries to make out that he's doing the parishes a favour, but in reality he is costing ratepayers money in most cases and increasing the administrative burden totally unnecessarily. So, and it might even be worse, because I was getting some advice from the Law Officers Department the last couple of days, that roads are land. And the way the legislation has been drafted, it's been suggested to me by the Law Officers Department that the state's roads, main roads, will be exempt from rates, but that the parish roads will not be, and therefore may have to be rated and pay the island-wide rates. Now, the constables, in the main, have indicated that they are of the opinion that leaving an exemption from the island-wide rate for the states does not address the primary goal of the states paying rates on an equal basis. I consider that the implications for other ratepayers of the states paying parish rates have not been fully costed or satisfactorily funded. I do not support the taxation of education by virtue of the payment of rates on state schools. And I deplore the fact, sir, this proposition is being brought spending £900,000 of taxpayers' money with no funding mechanism. So if the Minister really wants to give the parishes £900,000, then can I suggest he just writes out a cheque and forget about the nightmare scenario of all the work that's going to go into this rate system.
Is there any other member? Councillor Smith.
Sir, first of all, not to speak just yet, sir, but could I ask the Solicitor General, please, for some clarification? Because I too have been to see the Solicitor General, but only at the very 11th hour, of concerns that I had over how the detail of this this legislation hung together. And can I just ask the Solicitor General if he can clarify about the rating of the roads? Because contrary to what my colleague said, I believe that the main roads will need to be rated, but and that the states will have a liability to pay duty on them. Could I ask the Solicitor General if I've misunderstood what he just told me, or if you could clarify that, please?
Mr. Saray, able to assist the Assembly?
Yes, sir. As regards roads, there's obviously two types of roads. There's the parish roads and the Grand Route, or the main roads. The issue arises as regards both in relation to the definition of land, the existing definition of land, which is currently in the rates law, because that is an encompassing definition, because it's defined as land includes, and then very specific, such as houses, buildings. But on the face of that definition, the word includes means that roads are potentially land. So in terms of how this would affect rates, essentially the parish, in respect of parish roads, it would need to pay parish rates, but it would be covered by an exemption for island rates in the new legislation. And similarly, as regards the Grand Route, the states would also need to pay parish rates, but it would be covered by the proposed exemption in the new legislation in respect of island rates. So my reading of the effect of the legislation, in summary, is that both the parish and the states would need to pay parish rates in respect of parish roads, but both would be exempt from the island rates in respect of the Grand Route.
Thank you. I'm grateful. May I now continue with my speech?
Yes,
So I've got a question for the Attorney General based upon what he's just said.
Oh, well, let's get the questions for the Solicitor General out of the way.
If that's
yes, no, that's fine.
So if I may just clarify, the previous debate centred around the revaluation and the revaluation of states' land. The majority of, in fact, I think all of the land that the states will, or the parishes that will be chargeable for rates, is non-domestic, because domestic properties are already, most of it has already been pushed out into Andium, etc. So apart from perhaps a few properties that the states own. So we're dealing with non-domestic property. So if there is any, and we've just passed a piece of an article which allows, by regulations, matters concerning the valuation of the non-domestic property to be established by regulations. So if there is an issue which comes at the last hour, am I not right that the issue of roads, which should have been rated anyway, because if they were not, this doesn't change the fact that roads are rated, then that can be dealt with by the amendment that we've just dealt with by revaluation. It's a question, yes. In other words, can the issue that has been raised not be dealt with by, because the question is, you know, there's the question of whether and at what rate. And the question I'm asking the Solicitor General is, am I not correct in saying that the valuation approach of what is effectively non-domestic property, i.e. roads, can be dealt with in the manner in which the states have just approved by regulations?
Sir, excuse me, may I just point of clarification there? We haven't actually approved any regulations. I thought that was the whole premise by which the Assembly adopted that last article. It was because the regulations, the debate would come later, sir.
Yes, I think what the Senator is saying, Honourable, is that the States, by adopting Article 16, has adopted a mechanism whereby valuation can be established before the Assembly on a later occasion, and he's asking the Solicitor General whether such a mechanism could cover the difficulties that you are concerned about with Article 17. If I've misunderstood the question, then...
So I do understand that, sir, and I thank you for that. I'm just at a loss, sir. As the article we are debating now comes into force before we do anything regarding revaluation, sir.
Well, Mr. Solicitor, have you followed the question and able to assist us with an answer?
Yes, I think I have followed the question. In respect of my answer, I think, whilst it clearly would be open to any revaluation exercise to deal with revaluation of rateable values of roads, looking at the way that the rates law is drafted and the way that this legislation is, the proposed legislation is drafted, it does look to me as though, there would be a potential charge in respect to parish rates, in respect of roads in the way I described, that would potentially arise, and I'm not necessarily sure that it could be deferred off to any subsequent revaluation exercise in the manner that was discussed in relation to the proposed Article 16 that was just voted on by the Assembly. Having said that, the legislation, the rates, the rates law, it obviously does create obligations as regards the requirement to pay rates and the power to levy rates. But the fact there is a power to impose rates in respect to particular land doesn't necessarily mean, I suppose, that it has to be used. I'm sorry, that's not a particularly clear answer, sir. I think it is quite a difficult question that the Senator has raised, and I'm attempting my best to answer it on my feet, but I'm not sure it's not a straightforward question, I have to say. I think, in summary, that there is, on the face of the legislation, that there is in principle, there is a liability to pay parish rates on roads for both the parishes and the states. But the fact that there is that liability there does not necessarily mean that it has to be imposed immediately. I think that's probably the best I can answer it on my feet in this way without having had the chance to consider it.
Sir, further to that, sir, may I ask the Solicitor General exactly what he means by that? Because there are liabilities all through the rates law to pay rates, and I've never yet been advised as a constable, I never talked to my rates assessors about perhaps excluding classes of ratepayers because maybe we just don't want to charge them yet, sir. I've never found that to be an option. Is the Solicitor General really saying that we have a choice?
And sir, may I ask a question? If the Solicitor General is telling us that we have a choice, are we able to choose to impose rates on the state's roads and charge them and not on the parish roads?
It's a liability. It's a liability. The liability to pay rates on states' roads is a liability for the states, and they're exempted in respect of the Grand Route. In respect of the Deputy for St Mary's question, I did say that it was the best I could do on my feet, and I apologise for that. But it is not a straightforward question. This is quite complex legislation, and it's not immediately obvious. I can reflect further on the question and see if I can improve on the answer that I just gave. But it's not immediately obvious as to the answer to Senator Ozov's question at this stage.
You would like the Solicitor General then to reflect and to perhaps answer before the proposer sums?
So I've been extremely grateful, and I don't wish to put the Solicitor General on the spot. This has come to me as the fog cleared in my addled brain, sir, and I'm grateful for his help in this.
Well, Solicitor, if you would give this some further thought, the concern of the Assembly seems to be whether or not, if there is a liability for rate, it is something that is capable of being immediately deferred, in other words, not put into effect as of the moment that the legislation is passed, or if it does have to come into effect, whether for it not to be payable at some rate in full would need the passing of the regulations anticipated in Article 16. Is that a fair summary of the question? Is that very well. Constable St Mary.
Thank you, sir. As I say, I apologise for putting the Solicitor General on the spot, but his words to me when he started to answer my question privately before were, this is extremely complex. It is extremely complex. There are, in my humble opinion, and I'm not a lawyer, although I've worked for some of the best, sir, there are unintended consequences in this legislation as drafted. And as I said this morning, I have no problem at all with the concept of the states paying rates on the property. St Mary, under these laws, under this regulations, loses out. It probably does anyway. But I've no problem with that as a concept. I do have a huge problem with the way this legislation, draft legislation, has been put together in an attempt to tackle the problem of funding. And I think I can almost, as I say, rest my case on the fact that it is extremely complex, and there are simple questions being asked which have very complicated answers. And I had a Cheshire Cat moment when the Solicitor General told me, well, yes, you'll have to pay parish rates on your parish roads. And I suddenly thought to myself, why would I write a cheque to myself? I've literally gone round and swallowed my own tail. I find this really, really difficult. A simple problem of St Helier and other parishes, but predominantly St Helier, requiring the rate base to recognise the state's properties. And as the Constable of St Clement's has already said, we're not talking about giving them extra revenue here, because you can only raise a rate that covers your budget. That's all you can do. So it doesn't matter. All we're doing is reapportioning it. And the complexity that is being suggested as a method of funding that is absolutely out of all proportion. And I'm amazed that somebody like Senator Ozov, who for years has championed the red tape initiative, doesn't understand that this is a convoluted and confusing and plain crazy way of doing it. Why would we raise rates on properties that we own so that we can pay ourselves? It is absolutely bizarre that it has come to this. I jokingly said to the Constable of St Helier, well, if you need X amount of money, and that's almost equating to the X amount of the Valazan Covenant, why don't they just give you the money for that and then we'd all be happy? It seems to me that there is probably a very pragmatic and very simple solution to funding this. But I'm glad I've calmed down from this morning, because I was passionate about this morning and I don't think I conveyed my concerns. The simple fact that somebody as erudite and as learned as the Solicitor General cannot simply say yes, no, to what is... I should say that I have come to my concerns at the 11th hour simply because I put together the new draft law. I took what I had before, I've taken out the bits that these amendments delete, I've added in the new bits. And it was only when I actually had the documentation in front of me, being able to read it from start to finish, that this total folly of what was being proposed became clear. And I am also so concerned, again, that something as onerous as this has been not slipped in. I'm not saying it's covert, but has been included in this finance law. It should have been dealt with separately. It should have been able to be called in for scrutiny. There is no possibility of having had this scrutinised. And this is something that has really far-reaching consequences. For years, under an agreement that goes back decades, our parish school in St Mary's, which technically the parish still owns, has been maintained by the Minister for Education in one form or another, and has been used exclusively for educational purposes. And I think that's worked really well. But under this, I've now, as constable, got to write a cheque to the Treasury for the island-wide rate that is payable on that school. I'm not getting anything in now to cover the school. I don't have any possibility of recovering that money. I am paying out a new tax from St Mary's on behalf of a building that has been in parish ownership since it was built in 1901, I think. There are a whole raft of unintended consequences in here that miraculously become clear when you print out a document that has everything in it. I don't recall as a States member being given what I would call a marked up copy. And I think this has been done, I think we've really almost been disregarded in the construction of this. And I'm past being really worried about it. I'm actually quite angry about it now. I really am quite angry about it, and I've lost quite a lot. As I said to one minister just recently, I've lost faith now in any trust that I had that I was being dealt with fairly. I have no problem with the decision that was taken democratically in this Assembly for St Helena to receive money on the state-owned property that is used for in accordance with the agreement. I really have the most fundamental difficulty taking this piece of legislation and saying, yes, that does the job. Because, sir, I'm sorry, it doesn't.
Does any other member wish to speak? Connie Tabor, St Martin.
Thank you, sir. If this is approved today, and I think it's unlike Article 16, but I think the Solicitor General is actually looking at it at the moment, this would come in immediately, it's my understanding. I could just refer to Hansard, 4th of June 2013. If the proposition is adopted today, then I suppose it will be possible for the Minister for Treasury and Resources to come back to this Assembly next month, maybe next year, to bring his own proposition, to remove other parts of those articles and set the parishes to rate their own parish-owned properties and land and pay at least the island-wide rate portion to the Treasury for his or own properties, his or her being the Connie-Tabs. I suppose it is possible that any member, in particular Connie-Tab, and hopefully maybe not next year, of all years, could bring a proposition to change other parts of the rates law and seek that maybe churches and chapels or even land used by the Minister of Education, Sport and Culture to be removed from exemptions under Articles 17 and 18 and seek that they start paying the foncier and occupiers rates on their buildings or land. I have concerns that removing the current exemptions from this relatively new law, this piece of legislation, sir. My dad said, never say I told you so I shouldn't have read that, but that's the words I used on the 4th of June 2013 and what we see today, sir. I accept it. Subsequently, it's been approved when we discussed the strategic plan for the states to pay rates on the properties, and we know that there's going to be considerable gains for St Helier, St Saviour's, St Bullards in particular. But there was also talk of some parishes at the time receiving an incentive as well. Well, I think our incentives in St Martin's is minimal, if there's anything at all, sir. I know Deputy Hilton queried the Connie-Tabs. She had concerns last week, and we did explain when we had the presentation. I don't think her concerns were against the Connie-Tabs. She believed something had been approved, and that the Connie-Tabs were now opposing something that the States Assembly had agreed upon. Well, so we did agree to assist by the states paying rates, on their properties, but that was all it was. This is something far greater, and I think the Deputy accepted that when we explained it last week. The second part that was never agreed was the parishes paying the island-wide rate. So I'm all for fairness, and I spoke to Senator Roseff during lunchtime. I think I'm a fair person. And we had, this morning's debate was all about fairness. Members need to look at the second part slightly differently, because this isn't really about fairness. This is fair, but this is an argument this afternoon that is slightly different to the argument that the Senator spoke strongly about this morning. The Minister has to find some way of funding this, and I know the Conotab of St Mary's has just mentioned it. The contribution that you're going to receive from the parishes is going to be nowhere near the funding that's going to be required. We know it's near £1 million, and I would suspect, I think I haven't got the figures with me now, but it's something more like 10% probably going to be raised by imposing this. But what we'll see is the ratepayers of all parishes possibly paying more in their parish rates, so that the parishes can afford to pay the island-wide rate to the states. And I would say to the deputies of St Helier, who appear to have had the private briefing with the chairman of the St Helier Rates Assessors and the chairman of the Rates Assessors, voting against this one this afternoon does not affect the states paying their rates to the parishes, and in particular St Helier. This is something different. This is just a means to offset. It's just a means to offset the cost of the states, and won't achieve the target I've set. And I get back to those initial comments that I made in 2013. Where do we go next? What's it look like to the public this afternoon? And I think the Constable of St Mary's has just probably highlighted that, if those that are watching and those that might be listening. This is a parish collecting money by way of rates to run a parish. The parish collecting on behalf of the states the island-wide rate, which we do. For the state's treasury, we collect the island-wide rate. Parish receiving a contribution from the states to pay for their parish for the rates. Well done to St Helier. And the parish is paying the states for the island-wide rate, paid for and collected from parishioners. And the parishioners now the parishes having to increase their rates, especially with the re-evaluation vision that was approved this morning. We may well have to increase the normal domestic rates on people. And the Treasury receiving a greater proportion of the rates again. It's a help for the Treasury. So I'm a cynic, and I think I say things as I see them, maybe not probably in the best way sometimes, I hope I try to. The Rates 2005 law was thoroughly researched and debated at the time, and it was approved. Exemptions were put in place for a reason. We are nibbling away at parts of the rates law. This amendment is just another part of the law being nibbled away. Article 15 is quite clear that rates are to be applied for the payment of the general expenses of a parish arising during the financial year that begins during the rateable year. This issue arises when we, the parishes, started collecting the island-wide rate, a function we undertake, as I said before, on behalf of the states. And when we've we've tried to work closely with social security ministers in the past, that the constables have, because of those on income support, and the social security department unable to take part of the rates out of the income support so that we can return back to the Treasury what should be owed to them. So there's a little more than I can say at the moment. I think we've seen the debate going this afternoon. I'm not sure if we just go to the vote, or should there have been a reference back on this issue, but it's something that the members might wish to consider, sir. Thank you.
Does any other member wish to speak on Article 17? Deputy Mason?
Just very quickly, so it's interesting to note that many of the constables here have highlighted some grave concerns about this. Well, it sounds to me there hasn't been that level of consultation about this particular work. There certainly haven't been any parish assemblies to endorse this approach either. And those members who will stand up in this assembly and say, actually, that's why the constables are in here, in order to do that, as part of their role, to get that endorsement, are going to be the ones not supporting the constables in their concerns today. So given the concerns that the constables outlined in the previous vote, I supported them on that. I will be doing so in this one as well. And I think members should bear that in mind. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Kevin Lewis.
Thank you, sir. I'll be very brief, sir. I would like to have seen this as a standalone proposition, so it could have been called in if need be. But under Part 5, General, Citation and Commencement, this law may be cited as the Finance 2017 Budget, Jersey Law 2000 in blank. And 2, except as otherwise provided in Article 5, 6, 7, brackets 2 and 13, this law shall come into force on 1st of January 2017. I know it's just the mechanism, sir, but the law will come into force then. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Martin.
Yes, thank you, sir. And I don't want to go on about the last debate, but I will cover a few things that I did say in that, but elaborate on them. So you look back, and we're hearing now, why is it today? Why is it done this way? Why? And everyone agreed, as it says in the comments. I think it was 37 votes, 36 votes for, 6 votes contre, that the state should pay rates. And it should be in the lifetime of the medium-term financial plan, which this is about the last time we can debate to get it in the years of the 17, 18 and 19. So there's your why. And it's always disappointing at sort of the last minute, and you know, the Deputy of St Mary said this sort of it was a last minute when she was looking at things, didn't think it added up. So, you know, and I'm certainly not picking on the Constable, sorry, I mean the Constable of St Mary, and I'm not picking on, but I had to pick out a few parishes, sir. So I did go on a few of the websites and I looked, I mean, it's literally what Deputy Masson says about consultation. And all I can find, sir, in 2015 in October, there was a consultation, and it was for littering and dog fouling. And there's not been one since to the people who the constables represent, who tell us they should be in this house because they know what their parishioners are all about. And they are, as Deputy Bree alludes to, says they are, the experts on the rates law. They agreed in 2015, I think it was all the constables, bar 1 or 2, to pay the state's rates. And since then, they've put that to bed and wondered how it's going to be done. Again, not consulting with their parishioners, who they all know value the town, and it will affect St Helier more than anybody else. I'm also slightly concerned about the comments from the constables, because they're contradictory, and I know they probably, and I do feel for them, because they don't have the experts or the officers in the Treasury and everything. But on page 5, they talk about the incorporation of the ports of Jersey and Andiam Homes means that significant parts of the state's portfolio already has moved out of the exemption for public authorities. So rates, both parish and island-wide, are paid. And at the bottom in that same paragraph, it says the Housing Department paid approximately £333 in rates to St Helier alone. Housing always paid their rates before they were Andiam. They still pay the same rate. And let me tell you, for anybody out there who is watching, every state tenant is rated on the rateable value that their home is as well. My private flat, my state's flat, is exactly the same as the man across the road, the same 2-bedroom flat on the attributes. Absolutely. And it is rated like that. So be under no illusion that Andiam Homes now just pay the rates. They've always paid the rates. So it's sort of, I then wonder, so you then have to think, Deputy Bree tells me that the constables are the experts. So then I start reading the rates and I'm like, the comments, and I'm saying no. And then it's again, sir, on page 6, the penultimate paragraph, and it says, constables are also mindful that ratepayers of rural parishes saw their rates almost double when the island-wide rate was first introduced. And so its further increase is likely to be opposed. And they say, well, it's all about money, but it's not. And I did ask the Councillor of St Mary to remind me of the former Councillor of St Mary's name, Mr Ken Lebrun, was a great constable, and so is this constable. But if you go back to 2003, sir, St Mary's rate was 1 pence 90. The welfare was 50, and the parish rate was 140. So that was 120. But if you add on the, and even if you add on the island-wide rate, it brings it's still lower than it is today. It's absolutely 120, 70, 190. The rate today is 1.20. So I'm sorry about your parishioners you think are going to pay more money. It to me doesn't add up. The island-wide rate, and then the Constable of St Martin's just stood up and said, we collect the island-wide rate, and aren't we good? And we try to work with income support. Well, honestly think on, if you had all the elderly and all the care in each of your country parishes, what rate you would have to go to your parishioners for, like the Constable of St Helier, not this one, the one previous who lost his job over it, because he was up to a rate then in 98, 99 at 3p. It was ridiculous. And same in St Clement's and the same in St Saviour. They were the three highest rates. Now, I listened carefully as well to the Constable of St Clement's. And of course, he picked on, we don't want a tax on education. So I look at St Saviour and I see the potential could be 153,000, spot 173 in cost. But somebody is either missing out on this, or as I was a 26-year ratepayer in St Saviour, and I've just moved to the glorious parish of St Clement, I always prefer St Saviour. And it's just had to move, but I like both parishes. But I paid the rate in that. Was I subsidising some very able paying schools to have services? It seems like I am. And it seems like the rest of the ratepayers in St Saviour are doing a very good job at it as well. I think it's absolutely short-sighted. Why should they get a free pass? And somebody, sorry.
I just wonder if the deputy realises that actually the parish itself will be liable now to pay rates on the schools, not the schools necessarily. The schools will pay rates, but the parish will pay the FOSIA rates as well.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I do. What I'm saying is the services that are made now to the schools are free, so there could be a charge. I don't know how it will work out, but it will be a charge. So when the Constable of St Saviour speaks, which I mean, I don't know which way she's going to go on this, because it does seem there is an income here. And sorry, sir, there seems to be a confusion over whether it is FOSIA and whether it is. To be fair to the Constable of St Saviour, I don't know. I mean, I'm asking a question of the Constable because I've heard from one of her deputies. What is the cost to St Saviour to provide the services schools for free? And there must be a cost, and it's not a cost to the Constable of St Saviour, it's a cost to the ratepayer in St Saviour, like it is a cost to the ratepayer in St Helier. So if more people pay rates and they're distributed fairly across, there'll be less money to collect. It sort of adds up. And it's not rocket science. But I really, really do have a problem when people say that the parishioners of this parish and that parish will pay a little bit more when you haven't consulted them. You've had a year, did you consult before you voted for the states to pay rates? Have you, in your parishes, done proper cost-benefit analysis as what this will mean? But now say, oh, you're bringing this in the wrong way. It shouldn't be today. When should it be? Because 2017 is rapidly approaching. This is our last state sitting. We might be here tomorrow. But other than that, we won't be back to January the 17th, 2017. So we need a solution. Now, this is what was put forward, and the rates are approximately in each parish the same as they were in 2003. St Helier was rescued, St Saviour was rescued, and St Clement's was rescued because of income support. We could not sustain, but we were there. The other parishes were well coming up behind us, and they would have been able to pay all this. They would have tried to. It just wouldn't have been sustainable. So today we're asking that they pay the parish rate, and it, to me, is, you've seen the figures, potential figures that are in the comments from the minister. They aren't that much, but if it was a penny on each person's rate in the parish, or not a penny because it's a point, I always think 0.90, so 0.05. So it was 05 or 010 more on a quarter. Really? To be fair again, it goes back to this fairness. Would the island revolt? Would all the country parishes, the people who turn up to the rates assembly say no? I doubt it very much. But I don't know that. And the constables don't know that, sir, because they haven't consulted. And I'm told that by the Constable of St Mary that the assemblies are very tight in what they can ask their parishioners. But surely, sir, you can have a parish assembly on the rate. And there is one. It's an annual rate every year, and it could be added on. What do you think about this? So unless I've missed... sorry, the Constable wants to give what?
So this wasn't lodged till the 1st of November. Our rates assemblies are in July and August.
The Constable voted in 2015 to pay the parish rate. How did you think that Father Christmas was going to come along and with the magic sack of money and deliver it all around the 11 parishes? No, sir. It was no consultation. I fully respect the constables have the right. They are the mother and the father of the house, but they really should come back here and tell me what their parishioners think. We know what our parishioners think. We get it every year at our rates assembly. When are the states going to pay rates? Our elderly citizens' dinner. We told them we were going to the States and they were going to pay, we would get the money this week, and there was a whole round of applause from the 150 people there on Sunday. Probably more people than attend most of the rates assemblies in St Helier anyway. But they were happy. They were happy. I said in St Helier. Well, I'm sorry, sir, I didn't intend to upset all the constables. I think I have. Except my constable, which is, usually I upset my constable, sir, and I have a lot more in common with the other constables, but we are where we are. Today is the day. I don't think it's a reference back. You don't want to pay the rates, don't vote for this. If you want to pay the rates, you vote for this. It's quite simple to me. Thank you, sir.
Does any other member wish to speak on Article 17? Deputy Bree.
Thank you very much, sir. The decision by this Assembly for the states to pay rates was, as I understand it, based on the fact that a sustainable funding mechanism would be identified and put in place in order for the states to pay rates. Well, I can't see that one has been identified and put in place, point number one. Point number two, I think we need to be very, very careful when we are debating draft laws, is not just to debate what is in the report, but for us to very carefully read what is actually in the draft legislation. We have heard today from the Solicitor General that at the moment, in his opinion, at the moment, rates, by agreeing to Article 17 of this, rates will be paid on roads. Now, I am sure that was not the intention. So the question is the way in which this legislation drafted, one, does it meet the aim of the states paying rates provided it's found a funding mechanism to do so? And two, is it actually fit for purpose? I cannot support any piece of legislation that I do not believe to be fit for purpose. And I would recommend, sir, that all members read the legislation that we are agreeing to, as well as reading the report that accompanies it, because the two may and can be different. And that is why I do not feel I can support this particular article in this particular draft law, because I am not sure, and we have heard from the Solicitor General, that there may be implications in this particular draft legislation which were not intended. And therefore I think we have to be very, very careful that we don't merely debate principles and words in reports, but actually look carefully at what is in the draft legislation. And do we believe it will provide what we expect it to? Thank you, sir.
Does any other member wish to speak on Article 17? Senator Rosie.
Thank you, sir. Sir, there are some members of this Assembly who have been campaigning for the states to pay rates for a number of years. And some of us included it in, and I imagine that a majority of those elected in St Helier would have put it in their manifestos. And I, for one, and I don't think I'm one of the only senators committed to do so. And that's why the principle has been established. What we've heard from the constables, who I respect, is, if I may say, new issues arriving at a very late stage, and if I may say, putting our Solicitor General in somewhat of a difficulty because he is not a rates assessor. Perhaps if we had a rates assessor expert in the Assembly, which I admire the Solicitor General, sir, but he is not a rates assessor. He is looking at the law. And so I may assist members by actually informing members of my understanding, because over the years I've done a lot of work on this whole issue. And Deputy Martin, when I sat next to her, I was on the State Parish Working Party when we actually introduced the difference of domestic and non-domestic rates. And it was I that proposed that differential precisely in order to ensure that there was a mechanism to raise a greater amount of money on commercial premises. The issue of attributes has been raised. Well, I need to say to my friendly constables, sir, that roads are not new. Roads have been in existence in Jersey in both parish ownership, in public ownership, and in private ownership for a long time. There have been attributes and rates assessments on attributes for roads levied for a number of years. And if I think of my own parish of St Saviour, I can think of a number of estates which are certainly not parish roads and certainly not public roads, Grand Route. I'm pleased there was no definite article, sir, and not La Grande Route, because it was always a Grande Route. So it's no, well, in fact, it's the public, it used to be a private transport and technical services designated road. Of course, there is an attribution approach to rates. That must be the case. If not, then the rates assessors in St Saviour and other parishes haven't been rating their land according to the responsibilities that they set out in the law. Of course, there is an attribute assessment for roads. Of course, that can be used for the purposes of assessing the state's ownership of rates and the payment of rates by states-owned roads in the parishes that are so egregiously affected by the unfairness of having so much states-owned property in their parishes. And so a number of members of this Assembly have spoken about fairness. The fairness of the rating system and the unfair system of raising money in the past that was largely dealt with by the removal of welfare from the parishes that had a disproportionate amount of welfare payments in their parishes, mainly St Saviour, St Clement and St Helier, was of course solved a number of years ago, and I was on that very working party, and I'm pleased that we dealt with that. And I just would respectfully remind the constables that they came out far better in terms of a deal with that. Because if they would have had to deal with the wrestling issues that this Assembly has dealt with, which is the cost of the ageing society and the residential care costs that would have been dealt with, then their parish assemblies, each one of them, would be faced with far greater difficulties than they would have done. So this Assembly has been fair to parishes in dealing with a historic issue. One remaining issue has been the fact that there is, without any question, without any shadow of a doubt, the fact that some parishes have a great deal of publicly owned land on which the parish must provide services and which they get no revenue from. That is most acutely felt in St Helier, but to some extent it is felt in St Saviour. The Connétable of St Saviour is the mother of her parish, and it is the parish of St Saviour that has the vast majority of schools in it. There is not a single penny of rates that the parish of St Saviour collects for the burden of those schools being in her parish. This article before us gives the opportunity for the Connétable of St Saviour to rate those schools which she herself has said, as her predecessors have done, as have representatives of St Saviour have said, is unfair. And that will allow her, according to the calculations that have been made, to raise, I think at St Saviour is approximately £156,000. Now, if the Constable of St Saviour and the other St Saviour representatives are saying that they are content with fairness being not applied to St Saviour, then I would be surprised. In fact, I would be astonished. I'd be astonished as a St Saviour ratepayer, if I may say. As a former St Helier deputy, that I have attended, not that I'm a very good attender of parish assemblies in St Saviour, in St Helier, but I know the strength of feeling that people in St Helier feel with the unfairness of the fact that the vast majority of office space, and that's not difficult to deal with, sir, there's clearly, even on an attribution basis, a very clear basis on which, because an estimate of revenue has been raised of the attribution basis for officers for St Helier, who of course is the home of most of the States of Jersey accommodation. And if my memory serves me correctly, the figure for St Helier is in the order of £600,000. Yeah, for St Helier. There is an unfairness, sir. There is an injustice. And it's been an injustice which has been wrestled by this Assembly for years. Right at the last minute, on a proposition that has been known to be coming for a long time, and with the greatest of respect to some of the connétables who have resisted this, and I respect their right, they can vote against it, that is their right. I understand the country parishes feel that this is too much of a generous situation for those parishes that have a great deal of state property in their parishes. I'll come to the schools in a minute, if I may say. I hear the Constable of St Mary remonstrating behind me. I will hopefully offer her some assistance in a minute. There is an unfairness. It's been going on for a long time, and this Assembly has agreed the principle of that. Now, if I may say, in relation to schools, sir, my understanding is that the States is the occupier. So they are going to be the ones that are going to be paying the rates on St Mary's School as occupier. So I'm not a lawyer, and I don't know exactly what the legal arrangement is between the parish of St Mary and the States, but I'm assuming that the States has been running that school for a significant period of time. I would suggest that it's more than 9 years. And in all cases, when it is a normal 9-year lease, there is an assumption that it is the occupier that pays the foncier. So where is the logic in suggesting right at the last minute that somehow those parish, which of course I think St Mary's is one, St Martin, I'm not sure who owns his splendid new school, I know he's got his own school. Well, the new school is owned by the state, so that's okay. But his new school, or his old school, he's obviously now doing a fantastic community project with. Surely, sir, schools are going to be subject to an occupier rate and a foncier rate, which is payable by the states. That has certainly been in the workings of the calculations. And if it isn't, can I respectfully say that the Treasury Minister, in summing up, actually confirms, for the avoidance of doubt, that he will put the necessary arrangements in place, is that the states will be the paying of the foncier rate. Yes, to the Constable of St Saviour I say, yes, she is entitled, her parish is entitled, if we vote in favour of this article, to £156,000 worth of revenue for the offsetting of the hassle and of the zero revenue that her parishioners get for having the majority of schools in her parish. And St Saviour and St Helier, who has the vast majority of officers, who gets not a penny of rates on that property, will get an appropriate payment for providing services to the states. This Assembly speaks of fairness. This is the end of the road for that fairness. We've debated it many times. There may be some issues of detail that have emerged right at the last minute. I've heard of roads and attributes. Well, I'm afraid attributes, roads have existed, and they must have got an attribution basis. So please, sir, don't let us vote on the basis that we don't know how to attribute, but do a rates assessment for an attribution of a road. Also, it is within the gift of the Treasury Minister, in the event of some real unintended consequence. I'm thinking also that there could be pipes under roads, sir. I'm thinking that there could be drains owned by the Infrastructure Minister, which until now, sir, those parish rates assessors have been thinking, I haven't actually levied a rates assessment on that.
Excuse me,
Well, of course,
I have a point of order here. He cannot say what the rates assessors are thinking because he has no idea.
No, that can't be a point of order. It could be a point of clarification if you wish to ask a question of the Senator, but it can't be a point of order because I can make absolutely no ruling on it.
So the problem is I've spoken to quite a lot of rates assessors. That's the problem. Being a constable's son, you actually do happen to have been almost brought up on the basis of that. I'm sorry that the constable finds my comments so unacceptable that she doesn't want to hear them. I'm sorry. But I am trying to say to the constable, with the greatest of respect, it is in her parish's best interests that the states pay rates. It is in the representatives of St Helier that the states pay rates. It is to a lesser extent in the interests of the deputies of St Clement that the states pay rates. St Peter's okay because we've incorporated the airport, so they got a little bounty. I think it was quite a big bounty actually. And I think that as we've incorporated entities, we've dealt with most of the other commercial things, which were in any case, if it was a commercial undertaking, they used to pay rates under an arrangement. So this Assembly operates normally on the basis of common sense and goodwill. And there is a common sense approach to dealing with the attribute valuation and rateable value of states and parish land. And I'm sure that the Treasury Minister will be having the opportunity in summing up to say that certainly in year one, if there was to be an issue with a parish that has been levied with a rateable assessment on some new attribution basis for something that previously wasn't rated or something that is included, I don't think the school is a thing. I can't think of anything else. Churches are exempted. I'm trying to think of anything else that is a problem. Of course, the Treasury Minister is able to rebate any of that money back to the parishes in the event of an unfairness. Those are minor issues, sir, which are solvable by goodwill and sensible decision-making. We've got sensible rates assessors that have been assessing properly rates and property for a number of years. we're going to have a discussion about how to improve that, and that's going to come before this Assembly. What would be unfair, and we would be letting down, and I say to members respectfully, a very significant proportion of the voting population of Jersey, of which there are 33,000 residents of St Helier. I think there are some 15,000 residents of St Saviour, and I can't remember what the resident population of St Clement's is. We would be letting them down, and letting them down to a very great extent. And I will say one final thing, sir. There is one other mechanism that constables have within their gift in order to split the commercial versus the domestic versus domestic or non-domestic apportionment. And that is the ratio. That ratio is considered annually. It's never changed. I think it's been 45, 55 since the beginning. In the event of the quarters now being reassessed based upon the assessment of the states, they're then free to change that ratio. And they can change that ratio in order to ensure that their own parishioners are not affected, because they can weight it according to the commercial properties, which the vast majority of which, as we said earlier, are in St Helier. So if there is any unfairness in some of the smaller rural parishes, it is by changing that ratio that will actually solve the problem, and that will actually ensure that those finance houses, because I think it's right that 80% of the commercial quarters in the island are in St Helier, and the last calculation that I did, 80% of them were from finance houses. So if there is needing to adjust that ratio, then I invite the constables to consider an adjustment in order to make fairness of any unintended consequence, which I don't think will happen, because I think sense will prevail, and the parish will, of course, pay the foncier on St Mary's School. They've clearly been occupying it. If it's not a lease, if they're not on a license, so I'm not going to ask for legal advice. But if it's not a license, it's certainly I think it certainly sounds and quacks and waddles like a lease. So I'm not sure the constable can actually throw out the education department. It sounds like a lease, and so it sounds as though the problem doesn't happen. So let us proceed. Let us proceed with goodwill. Let us proceed with the knowledge that the constables and their assessors do their job properly, and where they have found that there is in fact property that has not been rated, they will do so, and do so properly. But there will also then be a fair payment of rates to those 3 parishes that have so, for many, many years, been so unfairly treated. I urge members to vote in favour of Article 17. If there are any issues, they can be sorted out. But we have, with the greatest of respect, lodged this on the 1st of November. Some of these issues are for the first time being raised on the 14th of December. We all have an obligation to read legislation when it is published. And of course, on the 1st of November, this wasn't a surprise. It was expected, because we'd already made a decision that the state should pay rates. And if we don't stick by that, we shall be not only letting ourselves down by not following through on something, but we will be letting particularly the parishioners of St Helier, St Clement and St Saviour down. And I urge members to support Article 17, and perhaps the Treasury Minister to give some emolument in his summing up.
Before calling upon the next member to speak, Mr. Solicitor General, have you had the chance to reach any conclusions on which you can advise the Assembly?
Yes, thank you, sir. I've reflected on this question posed by Senator Rose of whether it be possible to defer treatment of any assessment on roads, for example, to the revaluation exercise, which has been introduced pursuant to the resolution of this Assembly this morning. And so looking at the legislation, I think, sir, it is mandatory in its terms, looking particularly at Article 15 of the current rates law. It says each parish shall levy for each rateable year, and similar language is used throughout Articles 16, 17, 18 and 19. So I think, sir, the obligation to levy rates in respect of, for example, roads, I don't think on the face of the legislation is possible to defer it. pursuant to, I was speculating in my earlier answer just because the fact that there's a power to levy rates doesn't mean that it has to be used. But looking at the wording of this legislation, it does appear mandatory and it has to be levied. So thinking further about any ways that that might be mitigated, there are regulation-making powers in Article 49 of the Rates Law, and Article 49D does include a power to make regulations for amending exemptions from the foncier or occupiers rates, which are the rates which are an issue in respect of roads. That is a possible solution, that roads could be specified as an additional exemption from foncier or occupiers rates. And similarly, there's a power to amend a date or period of time in Article 49(1)(j) of the current law. Again, that could potentially be used to defer a liability to rates in respect of future years. In relation further to the question that was posed by Senator Ozef originally, yes, if there was a liability to pay rates in respect of roads, whilst it seems to arise, yes, on the face of the legislation, it's mandatory and it does arise. That's obviously not ruling out in future years that it could be looked at again pursuant to the revaluation exercise under Article 16 of the revised law as approved by the Assembly this morning. Finally, so I just mentioned, because it was a point that was mentioned by Senator Ozef, he thought that schools might be occupiers under, for example, a lease. I think, sir, because of some separate wording that appears in the education law, in Article 3 of the education law, I think certainly parish schools are effectively owned by the Minister for Education under that law. So I think there would be a liability to pay the foncier rate rather than an occupier's rate. I don't think I can assist further.
Thank you, Mr. General. Deputy St. Wong.
Thank you, sir. When I read the explanatory note to this draft finance law, I find that there are only 6 lines dealing with Article 17. And when I read the comments issued by the Council of Ministers, I find that they don't add much more to help me understand what on earth we are really dealing with here. Because for somebody not versed in the finer details of rating procedures, this appears to be a very complex piece of legislation, or its ramifications are. And why on earth we were only treated to 6 lines in an explanatory note when it must have been clear to many people better versed than I that there were all these complexities. It seems to me that there has been precious little consultation with those who administer the rates law, the connétables and the parishes. We have here a significant amendment to a primary law, which is being introduced in a law which doesn't permit any reference to scrutiny. So these provisions on rating cannot be scrutinised. And it seems to me that with such a fundamental amendment, this should have been brought as an amendment to the rates law, rather than part of the finance law. And we are urged to accept the article by Senator Ozef on the basis that we can all rest assured that common sense will prevail. And yet there is such fundamental disagreement and misunderstanding within this chamber. And this is not the way to draft legislation, to say let's push something through and work it out later by the use of common sense. We should be clear what we are legislating for. We should not have to guess at whether the schools are to be treated as if they're held on a long lease and provisions akin to that. If there's an issue about schools, we should know about it. We should know how the schools are to be rated. And if there is and it is also suggested by Senator Ossoff that at the last resort, the Treasury Minister has the power to remit any rates that might be paid that perhaps shouldn't be paid, but the law requires to be paid, so they can come back. But that's no way of administering a rating system.
Would the Deputy give way?
No, because Senator Ossoff did say that there was power in the Treasury Minister to remit the rates that were paid. What a way to... I mean, this is an Alice in Wonderland world, it seems to me, because we have a story of two types of roads, which has always been a bit of an oddity in Jersey. Okay, 3 types of roads if you've got the private ones, but 2 types of public roads. And we've got a story here of one type of public road paying one type of rate, but is exempt from another type of rate. And then you look at the other type of public road, and completely the reverse applies. And you have payments going around in circles. And as the Constable St Mary alluded to, you end up eating your tail because you write a cheque to yourself. Surely members of the public out there listening to this are thinking of us and thinking we're a laughing stock. How on earth we are arguing about this? And we come to a point where we're talking about rating public roads and public authorities paying money to each other for roads. For goodness me. And then, same attributes, yes, but roads. This is public authorities paying each other. This could have been worked out before. This doesn't need to come like this with such confusion. And it is unclear precisely what we are legislating for and the ramifications of it. And if I think about my poor St Wands and the grand route we have in St Wands is the largest parish by area. But we've got vast areas where there's few houses along those roads, where it's small population to pay for any rates that may be chargeable on those grand routes. So we start at St Wands Pond. We go all the way up to Latac, not many houses on that road. Then we go past Latac, up the hill to Les Lawns, not many houses around. And then all along to Plemore Bay. Even the little lane down to Plemore Bay is a grand route. And then you're stuck, you don't just end at Plemore, you have to come all the way back down through the parish. And you end up back in St Peter's. We've got a vast network of grand routes, and a small population to pay. How are the grand routes going to be assessed? Is it by the length of the roads that run through the parish? If so, poor St Wands will be paying a huge amount for its grand routes. But why can't I know now if roads are to be affected and how much this would amount to? Or if it is proposed, as the Solicitor General has suggested, that you could exempt the roads by regulation. Well, why hasn't somebody gone to the constables and said, surely the roads should be exempted? Because it is a nonsense to start assessing the roads that are used by every person in this island and suggesting that they be liable to rate. So I'm afraid this is a poor piece of legislation that has been drafted, it seems, without adequate consultation, and that leaves us in areas of such complexity that, first of all of this needs to be worked out, and then the matter brought back to this Assembly for further consideration. So I cannot support it. Thank you, sir.
The Deputy of St John.
Thank you, sir. I just actually wanted to ask a question of the Solicitor General, just because actually I couldn't say any more than what the Deputy of St Wands has just said, to be honest. I'm in agreement with paying for the states to pay rates. I believe it was the Constable St Helier that suggested that it came from savings in the states to pay for these rates. But to come up with a convoluted piece of legislation which clearly nobody fully understands because everyone's suggesting something completely different, and the irresponsible remarks made by Senator Ossoff about let's just push the legislation through and hope that we can deal with it later. I'm sorry, but I didn't come into the States Assembly to play games like that. I actually want to try and understand exactly what I am being asked. as a representative of the public to do. So, sir, I would like to ask a question of the Solicitor General, and it's particular to Article 17, where we're being asked to add 2 paragraphs in, and particularly paragraph 3. You can see this on page 27 of the draft finance law we're being asked to agree. In it actually states that a parochial authority is liable to pay the domestic or non-domestic rate on any part of land owned or occupied by the authority and used exclusively, and I emphasise the "and" used exclusively, either for parochial purposes or by the Minister for Education, as described in Article 17(2)(g). So by it stating that it says "and" exclusively, then if it is a parish road, because parish roads aren't actually used exclusively for parochial purposes, does that mean parish roads would therefore be exempt by way of this legislation anyway?
That might be your cue, Mr. Susanna.
So I would refer back to my previous answer that in respect of parish roads, the parish pays the parish rate, but in respect of grand routes, the states pays the parish rate, but not the island rates. So Article 19 is concerned with the island rate, so the exemption is that a parochial authority is liable to pay the domestic and non-domestic rate on any part of land owned or occupied by the authority, and I assume that means the parochial authority, and used exclusively either for parochial purposes or by the Minister for Education. So I don't think the island rate should be payable under that exemption. But I admit there are issues arising as to whether the use of a road is used exclusively for parochial purposes. It's arguable it could be used for public purposes as opposed to parochial purposes. So in respect of roads, this is quite a difficult area. It's not straightforward. I'm sorry, sir, I can't do better than that.
Well, had you finished your speech, Deputy St. John?
Yeah, no, I'd just like to thank the Solicitor General for attempting to answer that question. I'm glad I'm not the only one that's trying to get my head around it in particular. I would ask the Treasury Minister, I really would please ask that this actually came back as a separate piece of legislation that's been appropriately, and I'd be happy for it to come back in January or in February, once we've all been able to discuss this appropriately and make sure the legislation actually is fit for purpose. And I would seriously ask, I'm not going to say that I'm against the states paying rates. I'm not. I supported that in the strategic plan. I'm purely asking, as a representative, that I am asked to agree a piece of legislation that actually is fit for purpose. And I would ask the Treasury Minister consider that and to bring it back in an appropriate manner.
Senator Ferguson.
Yep, I can shout actually.
The microphone will be fine, Senator.
Right, sir. Yes, I do wonder actually whether St Helier complains about having to be the capital, well, the so-called capital of the island with all these commuters, and they're all such a burden. But actually, have they ever considered how beneficial it and what a benefit is to them? Because they've got the advantage of all the shops. And we country folk have to trail in to shop in St Helier. And the offices provide customers for the shops, because most shops in St Helier, their core business is the consumer traffic, the consumer people, the commuter traffic that comes in. But basically, I'm sorry, this whole thing starts to resemble a farce, So the States pays, if I understand it right, the States pays rates on the roads, and Jersey Water, JC, JT, Jersey Gas and Shaw pay the occupiers' rates on their pipework. But what about the sewage pipes? Do we then end up with the infrastructure department paying the occupiers' rates while the states are paying the fonciers? I really don't know. Are we going to end up with a toll on Victoria Avenue? It really is farcical. Will you please, Minister, withdraw this and bring it back as a standalone proposition so that we can scrutinise it properly before it comes to the states, so that it can be debated properly and understood properly. I'm not sure which panel will actually do the scrutiny, but I'm sure we'll find one. But really, treat us like adults and bring it back.
Deputy Mesnick.
Thank you, sir. I'm glad to follow the Senator because I think she quite ably made an example of some of the points that I'm going to elaborate on in my comments. I did say in my very, very first election manifesto that I would support the states paying rates on its buildings, and as I've always said, these old habits die hard, but therefore I must accordingly vote in line with what it was that I promised my electorate, and I do so incredibly enthusiastically. And here's why we're having a debate about this, really. And it is because for hundreds of years in this island, there has been a disparity between the country and town, both economically, culturally, and socially. And there is an absolutely wonderful book that I urge all states members to read. It's by John Callagher, and it's called The Triumph of the Country. You can get a copy from the Société or borrow it from the library, and you'll see my own name scribbled in it from when I've borrowed it previously as well. And it talks about how for hundreds of years, essentially the States has always let down St Helier. And it's let us down in many ways, largely as a result of the severe underrepresentation of St Helier in this assembly. In the 1850s, when St Helier had half of the population of the island, it only had a 1/12 of the representation in the States, something that was clearly wrong there. And whilst it's only marginally gotten better since then, it is still bad, and that is why I and many people in St Helier do still feel like St Helier is neglected by the states, by the government, and Senator Ferguson may like to portray us as just a bunch of whingers for that, but I think that there are some tangible bits of evidence to back that up. But looking back...
Sorry, sir.
You can only start if the deputy is prepared to give way.
I'm not. I want to get through with what I've got to say, because I'm sure there'll be other people who want to speak as well. So over those hundreds of years, this has manifested itself in ways like the states refusing to allow St Helier to have its own conseil municipal so that it can provide its own infrastructure. The states voted against that over several hundreds of years, and that has caused inequity there. The culture in St Helier, the way we do things, the way we think about things, is different, and that arises because of the demographic differences there have been. St Helier has historically been the home of immigrant populations when they've come here, and our political culture in St Helier is far more based on the English system because of English merchants coming in the 1800s, whereas the country parishes still have a lot more French connections, and that's fine. And that's fine. You know, we can operate independently with our municipal governments if we want to, and allow the country parishes to have their own way of doing things. And if we want to be able to do things in St Helier, you know, that should be democracy, that we'd be allowed to get on with that. But it must surely be wrong that St Helier is having to fund services for states buildings, which every islander receives a benefit from, and other parishes not be asked to contribute to that. That, to me, is manifestly unfair. It's a legacy of the past 200 years where St Helier has been consistently let down by the states, and now we have a Council of Ministers that actually wants to address it. That's fantastic, and okay, I may be cynical and I may oppose much of what the Council of Ministers does, but they have put their money where their mouth is. They are prepared to say, right, we know this is an issue, we know this matters to people in St Helier, and here is the vote we'll have in front of us to definitively decide and make sure that the states will be paying its rates, and that parishioners in St Helier will get the benefit from that. And I think that's thoroughly a good thing, and I'll be supporting it on that basis and hope that other members do, because this situation of unfairness simply cannot carry on. And I ask members to think, what would this instill in the minds of people in St Helier? I was at the pensioners' Christmas dinner in St Helier on Sunday, and there were 3 thunderous rounds of applause that were given throughout the course of the afternoon. The first was when Sir David Kirch walked into the room. He got a big round of applause, I think thoroughly deservedly so. Absolutely, and he deserves a foot stomping here. Let's see if this one gets a foot stomping. The second thunderous round of applause was for myself. There we are, thank you very much. I do appreciate that. And the third one was when the constable stood up in his address at the end and just informed parishioners about what would be happening over the next few weeks. And he said that the states would be debating a proposition which involved the states paying parish rates. And it got a thunderous round of applause because people in St Helier recognise that there's unfairness here. It's not right for them to have the burden of it and have to pay rates for buildings where we are all receiving benefit from, regardless of where we live in the island. And this proposition, it may well be imperfect, but I tell you what, the situation of the states not paying rates is even more imperfect, and we should be doing something to address that, which this proposition does make efforts to. And if it needs cleaning up in future, well, we can get our house in order when it comes to it. The principle, I think, is incredibly important and should be adopted. And I just think, and I perhaps say this tongue-in-cheek, but what would happen if people reading in the media about the vote, if it doesn't go the right way this afternoon, you only need 10 to sign a requête and hand it to the Constable of St Helier, saying, well, if we're not getting the rates, why should we provide the service? Imagine the bins piling up outside Cyril Lamarcon House because we're not getting the payment for delivering on that. I think, actually, there'd be a very logical argument for voting to support that, and I may myself want to support that, not just myself being a usual troublemaker, but because there's actually a good argument for that. That feeling will be legitimate. It will be exacerbated if the state does today what it has done for hundreds of years and ignored the needs of people in St Helier. We have a Council of Ministers which, at least on this one issue, is delivering on what it said it was going to deliver. I think that's incredibly important. And, I mean, surely we must be snapping up this opportunity when you can get both Senator Ossoff and myself to stand up and say we 100% agree with each other on something. That either means we're both incredibly right or incredibly wrong. On this occasion, I think it means we're both incredibly right, and so I hope States members will vote to support this.
Conor Thompson, John.
Thank you, sir. I'm delighted to follow Deputy Mezek and how very sadly incorrect he is. Nobody disputes the states should pay rates. We all agree. Nobody's disputing that point. What we are disputing is that the states pay rates, not that the parishes pay the rates for the states, which is what this proposition is that we, country parishes mostly, are bearing the burden of paying the rates in St Helier. Now let me give you just a little bit about fairness. When I became constable, the church wardens came to me and said, parish church needs doing up. Go and borrow the money. It'll only be £1 million. In other words, 2.5 years gross rates income will be spent doing up the church. And you work that out, that is totally, utterly and completely disproportionate to what St Helier spent doing up their church. We used to have a balanced system. Some parishes paid more for the church, paid more for the roads. Work out how much the roads, the parish roads in St John's, I'm spending £75,000, £80,000 this year on the roads in the parish. Break that down to per ratepayer, and it's astronomically high compared with St Helier. Some 15 odd years ago, when I was still in short trousers, this Assembly agreed that there should be an island-wide rate that would contribute towards welfare, and the constables would no longer be tasked with that job. 45% of our parish rate goes on paying welfare, and most of that is not for our own parishioners, it is for people outside our parish. Now stand up and tell me that you're for fairness, because it isn't fair. When my parishioners...
Through the chair, please.
Oh, through the chair, sorry. When my parishioners come to St Helier and spend money in the shops, it is the customers who are paying the rates, because that comes out through the shop. Without customers, the shops can't pay the rates. And just remember that you're very lucky in St Helier, because you have got shops, you've got offices, you've got businesses which are collecting rates which we in the country parishes do not have. There are two issues here, sir, which are very, very different. The first issue, which has clouded the waters, and we heard the very eloquent Assistant Minister of, I was going to say Morse code, but it's digital affairs, said, well, it's Morse code by the time it gets to St John's because it's so slow. Saying we must pay rates. It's right that we pay rates. That debate's taken place. We're not here debating that. Nobody disagrees with that. What we're debating is, should the parishes be paying the rates, or should the states be paying the parish rates? And it's two very different arguments. Just one point I need to correct with Deputy Martin. She quoted St Mary and how their rates came down from 1.9p to 1p. Yes, they did. Because in 2005, all properties were reassessed. Therefore, the number of quarters went up, so that the rate per quarter came down. But the actual gross sum of money paid remained very similar. And in St John's, the same thing happened. But don't compare rates pre-2005 with post-2005, because at that point, everybody's rates were reassessed, and you cannot compare the two dates, because they're not like with like, because the quarters changed. Sir, this concerns me enormously, the way this has been brought. We are here to discuss the finance law, not the rates law. If you want to discuss the rates law, lodge it separately, do it properly, so it can be scrutinised, so it can be properly examined, and consult the constables. Don't do it in a manner that I cannot repeat in this assembly, sir, and push it through on the nod or in an attempt in a manner that can't be scrutinised through the finance law, instead of doing it in an orderly, proper, above-board manner. No wonder the Council of Ministers do not have the public's respect if this is the way you wish to introduce legislation. I cannot stress my anger, but not just my anger, the anger of my parishioners who I've spoken to, at the way in which this is being done. And it's the way it's being done. And I would urge the Minister to stand up and do something principled and say, I withdraw this, and bring it back when it can be properly debated with the suitable respect to this Assembly. Failing that, I urge members to reject this, because it is probably one of the worst things we've ever been asked to accept. Thank you, sir.
Senator Balash.
So it seems to me that members are making very heavy weather of this. One might even have thought that this was the silly season. And I've never thought of Christmas time as being the silly season. if the members are insistent on wrecking this amendment to the parish rates law, then of course they can. But it seems to me that it is completely unnecessary. We have all agreed, the Constable has just reminded us, we have all agreed that the state should pay rates on states' property. And this amendment achieves that end. Where it seems to have gone wrong, sir, and I wasn't here, unfortunately, when the question was put to the Solicitor General, where it seems to have gone wrong is that the question has been raised as to whether roads fall within the definition of land within the rates law and are liable to assessment. The Solicitor General has said that the treatment of roads under the parish rates law is difficult, not obvious. And I'm not surprised at this opinion that the Solicitor General has expressed, because never before in all my experience have I heard it suggested that public roads were liable to rate. I challenge any of the constables to identify any public road that they have ever assessed a rate in their parishes. It appears there are none. The most important issue, sir, is whether anyone wishes to rate public roads. And surely the answer to that is no. No one wants to do that. So is not the sensible solution to pass this amendment to the parish rates law, which gives effect to that which we all want to do, and to allow the law officers to examine the difficult legal question at leisure? If the result of that detailed examination is to confirm the opinion that the Solicitor General has given us, and that roads fall within the definition of land and are liable to rate, then regulations can very easily be brought before this Assembly to amend Articles 17 and 18 of the law to exempt roads, respectively, from foncier and occupier's rate. It seems to me, sir, the matter is as simple as that, and we ought to allow the amendment to go through.
On a point of clarification, so currently roads are owned either by the states or by parishes, and therefore currently under the law are exempt anyway as either parish or states owned. So this is introducing a different set of rules.
What point of clarification are you seeking from
well, I was just wishing to clarify that currently...
I'm sorry, you have already spoken.
All right.
You can, Deputy Sutton.
Thank you, sir. And I shall be very brief. And it rarely happens that I can speak with such clarity and directness in support of Senator Balash, who hit the nail right squarely on the head when he suggested that perhaps we shouldn't be talking about rating the roads, because we've traditionally never done that. And who, if anyone, it really was something out of Alice in Wonderland, and suddenly we're talking about rating the roads, which nobody has ever dreamed of doing. And it's a simple matter. If the law needs amendment in order that we don't rate the roads, then we simply go ahead and provide that exemption. It just seems to me crazy that we've ended up with a discussion about whether or not to rate the roads, which is a non-question. Can we please either get on with coming to a conclusion on this. We all support the states paying rates. Let's get on with it.
Solicitor General, did you wish to say something? You put your light on.
So yes, I simply, because I haven't mentioned it before, but the issue of rating roads hasn't previously arisen because of the wording of the exemption in the current Article 17(2)(f), which exempts land from the foncier rate, and F provides that land owned by any public or parochial authority and used exclusively for public or parochial purposes. Now that applies to roads, whichever way you look at it. So I think that is at least one explanation for why roads are not currently rated under the rates law. And it's only because that the Article 17(1) of the current legislation that's being considered removes the words public or from Article 17(2)(f). And in addition, there's similar language in the current version of Article 18(2)(c), that this issue arises in respect of roads. I simply offer that by way of explanation.
So may I just offer a further point of clarification, because there are three...
Sorry, I beg your pardon.
It's a legal question, sir. Of course it is, sir.
Well, very well, if you'd like to ask a question.
So my question to the Solicitor General is that he is quite right in his reading of that article, but those are roads that are in the for public and parochial use, which is being removed. There is a third category of we are wrestling with what the attributes and the like valuation or quarter assessment is for roads could be if that exemption to be removed. And could the Solicitor General confirm that there is a third category of roads in the island, which are roads that are neither parish nor public, for example, Milady Farm, which are private roads which are publicly accessible and therefore do fall within the current ambit of the rates assessors? And my information is that the parish assessors have raised it as a zero assessment. So the issue doesn't rise.
You're conveying a great deal of information on what really should be just a question to the Solicitor General.
Well, there is. He was asking a question about roads. I'm saying there's a third category. You confirm that there's a third category of roads.
Thank you. Mr. Solicitor, is there a third category of roads, private roads, which
Yes,
may
there
or may
is
not be included within the rating provisions of the law?
There is a third category of private roads. My knowledge of how they are rated is limited, but I understand that some of them, at least, can be zero rated.
Very well, thank you. Does any other member wish to speak upon Article 17? Deputy Andrew Lewis.
Just briefly, sir. I see this as almost like an enabling act to get on and do the job that this Assembly agreed to do some time ago. And I've been fascinated listening to some of the arguments today, and there's some very, very knowledgeable people here that know far more about the rate system than I ever will. And I bow to that knowledge. But this is enabling legislation so you can get on and do the job later. Now, I see constables shaking their heads, and I have considerable respect for those benches. But we do need to get on and do this. We've agreed to do it, not me, previous Assembly, and it's the right thing to do, as another number of members have suggested. And we're now getting bogged down in the very detail that should be discussed later, and the Act then remedied to be fit for purpose. So all the things that we're talking about here, my understanding is they can all be resolved later. Perhaps.
No, please. Let the deputy speak.
But another question I have, sir, if I may continue, is my understanding is that the President of the Committee to Conatab has a standing invitation to sit around the Council Minister's table. I'm not sure how often that is taken up, but the time that I was around the large table, sir, frequently Constable of St. Juan was there, if not every sitting. So perhaps if that happened, maybe it does happen often, I don't know, I'm not there. But if it hasn't been happening, perhaps this is why we are where we are today. Maybe there could be more communication between the Council Minister and the Committee to Conatab. I was talking to the President earlier, And he was saying, well, I've tried, but they're not listening. We hear that phrase a lot in politics. Perhaps we don't always hear what we want to hear, but maybe not a lot of listening's been going on either. But the fact is, we are where we are today. I have an obligation to my own parishioners of St Helier, who really would like to see this happen. They're not bothered about the detail, but we should be. We should be, and I'm not saying we shouldn't be. But my parishioners in my constituency, and I having been to the same old folks' Christmas party last week as other members have spoken about, were very, very much in favour of this getting on with this, and that St Helier should not be penalised for all of the costs of running their parish when everybody in the island uses it. And that's a frequent comment that I hear, particularly from some of our elder parishioners. We heard it last weekend. We need to get on with this. This is enabling legislation to enable the Committee of Connotab, the constables, to have the conversations we're having now in open house to sort out the detail. And the Treasury Minister should listen and act. And it's a shame it didn't happen beforehand, but we are where we are. And I think we need to get on with this and do it, as we said we would in an assembly not so long ago. And we all get castigated by the public if we don't make a decision on this. And that's unfortunate as well. So I think we do need to make a decision, a positive one, get on with this, and sort the rest out later. I don't say that that's perfect, but I think it's been said before by Senator Lamocon. There's such a thing as a perfect plan, and it's better to get on with something and get it done rather than having it perfect. The imperfections can be sorted out later. I'm not saying that's perfect either or ideal, but better to have a plan than a perfect plan that never actually gets enacted. And we have been discussing this, as has been said by other members, for quite a long time. So I think we really should be bold, get on with it. Yes, castigate the council ministers perhaps for not bringing this in quite the way they could have done. It could have formed part of a revised rates bill or something, but it hasn't been. We are where we are. I think we need to get on with it and sort it out and vote positively for it today and sort the rest out later and do it better next time. Thank you.
Does any other member wish to speak on Senator Farnham?
This is one of the most conflicted debates I think I've ever witnessed, and it's going to be interesting to see how this would play out under super constituencies, because we have a really divided town and country position here, and that's where I think the role of senator can take an impartial view. This is a party political broadcast on behalf of the island-wide mandate, sir. But seriously, I have been a deputy, and actually, when I say I'm enjoying looking at this from with an island-wide mandate, I don't mean that in any frivolous way, other than I feel I can be completely impartial without any loyalty to a constable or parishioners, because actually we have to sometimes put those loyalties to one side, and this assembly needs to act in the best interests of the island. Following on from Senator Balash's his speech there, where he highlighted the fact that we can, of course, deal with any nonsense, and of course it would be absolute nonsense for a parish to have to pay rates and then get them back. And other imperfections, we can sort that out in the fullness of time. But I live in St Wonsor, and I'm very happy with that constable and deputy. Generally get pretty good service out of them. And, and I hope I pay that back as well from time to time. But I think I spend more time in St Helier than I do in St Won. And the whole island utilises St Helier. It's our capital. The majority of our people live there. And it goes without saying that they must be treated fairly. So I think it is in the island's best interest for us to proceed with this amendment, with these regulations, as they are stated. We can sort out any nonsense later on, which we will do, and act in the island-wide interest and do what is fair and right, sir. Thank you.
Councillor Trinity.
Thank you, sir. I would just like to warn the members to be careful for what you wish for. I don't think anyone here has a problem with the concept of St Helier paying rates. But what we do have a problem with is the vehicle which has been designed to achieve that, which in my opinion, and I think most of my fellow constables agree, is akin to a camel. And when I say be careful what you wish for, this morning we've already voted for Article 16. I remember a very good friend of mine, Senator Osif, standing up in my parish hall ripping out the property tax at the senatorial hustings. Only 2 pages of it, but be warned, it slipped back in again this morning by the back door. So be careful what you vote for. We're voting today for a camel. We don't want a camel. We want a properly considered system in which the rates that the states pay to the parish of St Helier is collected, but not what is on the table today. Thank you, sir.
Any other member? Deputy St Mary.
Thank you, sir. I too will be brief. I don't accept the charge that this is a contest between the country parishes and the town. We are at one. States should pay rates wherever they are. What is at issue is the way this legislation has been brought in. I share the frustration, if that is the right word, of the Deputy St One. Exasperation is probably a better word, in listening his concern as to how we are where we are and the complexity it involves. I also endorse the Deputy of St John's suggestion that is it not the appropriate course to bring this back to the States early in January if required, so we can debate an amendment to the rates law proper as opposed to bring it in within the budget legislation. That, I suggest, is a proper course. For that reason, I shall be voting against the proposition.
Any other member wish to speak? Deputy Labby.
Sir, after yesterday, my relationship with the constables is at an all-time high. I had the privilege and honour of the support of 9 of them yesterday, which is a new Olympic record for a backbencher, I think. My eyes have been opened further to the value of the constables in this house, and I was heard to be singing as I celebrated last night with a small sherry in an establishment next door. On the 9th day of Christmas, my true love sent to me 9 connetable. But I feel very uncomfortable sitting so close to them here because I feel their pain and their anger, and particularly of the Constable of St Saviour and the Constable of St John, who actually more often than not do support me. So it's a really difficult one. The only thing I would say to them is that St Helier, the people of St Helier are at boiling point too, because all they have had is promises, promises, promises so far over a long period of time and no results. And St Helier has been put on, the 4th priority of this government, something that we've all signed up to. And how is the rejuvenation of St Helier, not regeneration? It doesn't need regenerating, it doesn't need changing into something else, it just needs rejuvenating. How is that going to occur without resources? And it seems to me that this is the way that it's going to start to happen. We have the Future St Helier group doing excellent work, researching and talking to the people of St Helier about what they want for the rejuvenation of the town. And it's headed up by the Deputy of St Martin with the Deputy of Trinity and the Deputy of St Lawrence. All well and good. I'd like to have seen a few more deputies of St Helier on that group, but never mind. We are where we are and they're doing good work. So we cannot continue to wave the carrot in front of the people of St Helier. They do need to have some results. But and to be fair, St Mary's, St Albans, St Lawrence have had schemes, expensive schemes, costing more than what we're going to get for St Helier with these parish rates, possibly. And they are very, very good, and they're good for all of us. And what's the matter? The Constable of St Mary's aghast at me, and I don't want to upset her because. Go on, yeah, I'll give way.
Sorry, it's just to say that St Helier's had lots of bloody schemes too, and too right.
I mean, please can I remind members, you can interrupt another member if that member agrees to give way for the purposes of clarifying something you have said in your speech or asking for a point of clarification that the member has said in his speech, not to make additional supplemental points or answer points being made by the member. Please carry on.
Understood, and thank you, sir. But I do take the Constable of St Mary's point. And by the way, you know, she should be commended for weathering the storm with those changes in St Mary's, which now we're all, and I go through St Mary's an awful lot, and we're all getting used to. And we're beginning to like, and I had to, early in the days of those changes, I had to have a conversation in my car with a member of her honorary police who was holding a speed gun. Fortunately, he was still in training, and so I won't go further into that one, just to say that we've all retrained ourselves about how we travel through that parish, or go to that parish, and it's getting better and better. So, towns do need management. They don't just survive by themselves. They do need management. They do need careful management. They do need to respond to the economic climate of the time. And I have seen in my time in the southwest of England, where, particularly in Cornwall, it has to be said, and I hope they're not listening, that where it's gone terribly wrong. And once vibrant towns have been neglected and ended up as just a high street of charity shops and bookies, and the people of the surrounding areas have then had to go further out to other towns and have really regretted the demise of these places, and it is very, very sad to see. So we are looking to the Treasury Minister here to give us a good steer, because we don't want to upset our country constables. The Constable of St Martin said that that this is irrespective as to whether the parish of St Helier gets rates from the states, and I would like to know if that is true. But seriously, we can't go on anymore promising the people of St Helier some investment for improvements. And in the words of John Lennon, I would like to know from the Treasury Minister if indeed we can work it out.
Does any other member wish to speak on Article 17? Conatable St Helier.
Thank you, sir. My word, this is a bumpy road. I don't know why no one suggested it yet, but can we simply not zero rate the roads if they're such a problem? So it's not my place to sum up this debate. However, I have held back from speaking earlier. Perhaps I should have spoken earlier, because when the first red herring arrived, drawn across our paths, I didn't think that a majority of members were going to run after it, which of course is what's happened. Some members have tried to bring members back to the point, but unfortunately other members have taken us back to a debate about whether we should pay rates at all. The town versus country argument has come back in, I think, on both sides, and I think quite unhelpfully. But there we go. I'm going to, if I may, sir, just go through some of the speeches, because clearly I have the scars on my back, resulting from having brought this proposition to the States more or less on an annual basis since I was elected, I have to say, 15 years ago today. The chairman of the Committee of Constables spoke first, and he made one of the few references to what I thought would be a much bigger issue here, which is that Treasury has no idea how they're going to pay this. There has been no linkage with Article 16, I think, as we successfully realised when we had the previous debate. And the mechanism for how the states are going to find the additional revenue hasn't really been dwelt upon. As I say, the chairman mentioned, and I think another speaker also alluded to it. I was sort of prepared to deal with that argument, and in a way I'm sorry it hasn't come up very much, because it's one that I was looking forward to talking about. But perhaps a member will speak after me and say there is no money for the states to pay rates. And I just remind members that we've had the debate about the states paying rates, and I've likened it to a utility bill. We all pay our phone bill, we pay our water bill, we may pay a gas bill, electricity bill. We also pay a rates bill. And why should the states be any different? And previously, I remember a Treasury Minister in 2008, and I alluded to this earlier, stood up and agreed that the state should pay rates and said, as long as the ratepayers
pay us back. That, of course, went nowhere. That was 8 years ago. And that's how long we've been agonising over this matter. The constable, the chairman of the Committee of Constables, was one of several members who talked about how parish rates will be affected by this proposal. And as I think I've already explained, there is no need for that to happen. In fact, one of the most curious things about today's debate, and it may be that members simply haven't read the paperwork, is that most parishioners stand to benefit across the island. And if I could draw members' attention to page 2 of the Council of Ministers' comments, there is a table showing how much approximately the states will pay in rates in each of the parishes. Now, this money, as several members have said, is not exactly a windfall, but it does mean that parishioners or rates assemblies have a choice either of spending that money on improving their services or of lowering their rates. So this is why I'm so surprised to know that the Constable of St Saviour is going to go to her rates assembly in July 2017 and say, I've just turned down £150,000 of income that could have come into our coffers to either bring down our rates or to improve the projects we offer. The Constable and the deputies of St Brelade, we haven't heard from the Constable, but, or in fact from the deputies, but the Constable and deputies of St Brelade will have to explain to their ratepayers in July 2017 why, if they vote against this, they turned down £67,000 of extra rateable value that could have been spent in their parish. Even some of the smaller country parishes who have spoken so vociferously against this are going to turn down, in the case of St Martin, £7,000 rateable income. Trinity, £7,500. St Juan, £9,500. Now, the argument we've heard from the constables and some of the deputies is that, well, that's not the problem. The problem is that we as parishes are going to have to pay rates. So I would say to those constables, how much are you going to have to pay? And will it be more than the states are going to pay in your parishes? Well, sadly, we don't know the answer to that question. And why don't we know it? Because when the chairman of the Committee of Rates Assessors asked the parishes for their returns so that he and his colleagues could get an idea of what the payout would be, they only got a reply from one parish. And that parish was St Helier. And if members look at the draft budget statement, page 8 of the draft budget statement, and people have been very rude about the Treasury Minister and how he's presented this. Members look at page 8, it says, on the basis of equity and fairness, the budget also contains legislative change to enable the parishes to pay island-wide rates. This will cost approximately £20,000 a year for St Helier and considerably less for other parishes. So if St Helier, say, has roughly a third or two-thirds, who knows, but we're talking about a very small amount of money that will be spread across the other parishes. St Helier, we know, will pay the lion's share of that amount of money. In this case, it's £20,000. So the amounts the other parishes are going to have to pay will be very small. Certainly, if you live in St Saviour, when you find out that your representatives voted against £150,000 of extra income at rates assessment time, you will have to take a view about whether that was sensible or not. So I would suggest, sir, that purely out of parochial self-interest, the constables and the deputies should be supporting the states paying rates, because what they pay out as parishes will be far, far less than what they will gain from the state's properties paying rates. I'd like to also challenge a couple of other speakers, sir. Some members seem to feel that this matter has been rushed. Several members said it had been rushed, and that made me smile because, as I say, it's been debated so often. I have a whole ring binder of failed attempts to persuade the states to pay rates. And indeed, the Constable of St John was quite angry with the Treasury Minister, and I thought you were going to interrupt him, sir, when he said to Senator McLean, do something principled. I think that's actually very unfair. What the Treasury Minister is doing is implementing the decisions of the states in the strategic plan, in the medium-term financial plan, and he has to implement them because otherwise there's no money. There's no money to pay rates unless it's in the budget, and that's why he's put it in the budget. And members who've said, well, let's bring it back in January, well, they obviously have more appetite for another states rates debate than I do. You know, I'm actually quite fed up with having this debate because it has occupied so much time in my career in the Assembly. But if we come back in January, and it may be a seductive proposal to some members, those assessments cannot be sent out under the law. And the bills cannot be sent out in July. So we will lose another year of the states paying rates because of a red herring dragged across the path of this Assembly at the beginning of the debate. And so that may have to happen. I've done it long enough. I will bring it back. I'm quite happy to bring it back. But I don't think it needs to come back. I think we could be moving on to talk about other matters because the principle, all members practically have said they support the states paying rates. They've said that on a number of occasions. Now the Minister has brought it forward in the budget so that the money can be allocated to it, and members are finding reasons not to support it. Clearly, in an ideal world, the issue of roads would have arisen, but don't let any member say this should have gone to scrutiny. The strategic plan went to scrutiny. It contained the states paying rates. The MTFP went to scrutiny. It contained the proposal. The budget went to scrutiny. It contained the proposal. Scrutiny have had ample opportunity to deal with this. And of course, the constables themselves could have lodged an amendment to separate the states paying rates from the parishes paying rates, but they didn't. So they only have themselves to blame for not doing so. I submit, sir, that we have had the argument often enough. The Treasury Minister has at last found the money, not sure where from, but that's his business. He's now agreed to pay rates. And at the 11th hour, members whose constituents stand to benefit hugely from this are finding reasons to object to it. And I find that absolutely extraordinary. At the very least, St Helier, St Saviour, St Brelard, St Clement, I would add St John and St Juan, they are all going to be better off if the states pay rates. And that's why I believe, sir, a majority of members should be supporting the proposition. Of course, as Deputy Labby said very helpfully, the states have also said St Helier is a strategic priority. We have a future St Helier group. There is not much money now to do these projects, such as other parishes have enjoyed. That wonderful urban bit in the middle of St Mary, which I still have reservations about. So by not supporting this, we will deprive the capital of the ability to invest further in the town. And I think that is a great shame, because that extra money, it's entirely up to ratepayers, of course, when we get to July, but I'm almost certain that most St Helier ratepayers would not want a significant decrease in their rates. They would rather spend the money on urban regeneration projects, or rejuvenation, as Deputy Labby prefers. So it will seriously affect our ability in the coming year. So further delay is, I submit, completely unnecessary. The Working Party, convened, I believe, by Senator Frank Walker when he was Chief Minister, found in favour of this back in 2005. In 2008, as I've said, Senator Lassoir, when he was Chief Minister, brought a proposition to the states which appeared to offer the states paying rates, but actually was asking to take back the money with the other hand. Now we have a Treasury Minister who has effectively fulfilled the requirements of this Assembly's decisions early in the year, and he's brought a mechanism in the budget to pay rates as agreed by the states. I think so. It would be a great shame to put it off further. I, for one, would like to see this money flowing not only into St Helier, because it's not just about town, but into all the parishes that have states properties and which stand to benefit from this move. Thank you, sir.
Right, Iverson Brillard.
So I wasn't going to speak today, but the Constable St Heliers probably prodded me into saying something. I hope he's not going to regret that, but there we go. He mentions the sum that St Brellards could benefit from the state's paying rates. And what I will say is I, like many, I've got no issue about the state's paying rates. What I have got an issue about is the states need to pay it. And I don't like the convoluted way that we seem to be getting to that point. Now, he said to me, well, how am I going to explain £67,000 that we're not going to get in St Brellards? Well, one is, he made a decent point. I don't know what we're going to have to pay in rates. I think that's something that the Treasury Minister done. So we had all the information on the table, so we knew when we were coming here about what that sum may have been. Now, would we have had to be part of that? Absolutely, we would have done, but we should have that information in front of us. An issue that came out this morning, and this is why I think to vote for this or to agree to this is going to be compounding another mistake that we made this morning, is that in terms of what we're going to do potentially in rebalancing St Helier, is St Helier have got a lot of grade A office space. I accept that, and whether we pay enough rates or not is one issue. But what's going to happen is that they are going to rebalance St Helier. They've got an opportunity to do that. Grade A office space might be rated higher. Retail and some of the other shop space in St Helier may be rated less. What is going to happen is that's fine. They can rebalance that out in St Helier. In St Brellards, I've only got retail space. All that, because we have to be consistent around all the parishes, will have to drop. And who's going to pick up the cost of that? It's going to be the domestic ratepayer is going to have to pick up the difference. So when it comes down to me talking to my ratepayers about why I don't want, why I refuse 67,000 because I'm not going to support this, is I don't know what we're going to end up paying or what it's going to cost to the parish because I haven't got all the information. So that's why I'm not going to support this. The roads, I think, why we're heading off in that direction, I don't know, and I'm not going to get into that argument. It's one it's not for today. I totally agree. This should have been an amendment to the rates law. It shouldn't have been dealt with today under this particular piece of legislation. It's just a nonsense. There have been some red herrings. I really don't like, and I just was mentioned then about some of the benefits apparently St Albans, St Mary's and St Lawrence have got. I can't believe any St Helier deputy is saying St Helier's being penalised when you look at the investment St Helier's had over the years. They get a bulk of the investment into infrastructure into town. Also, the taxpayer, over the years, huge areas, and whether you're a fan of reclamation or not, St Helier's been the benefit of the reclamation scheme, which has been paid for by taxpayers. All the property on there now is rateable, and St Helier have had the benefits of those rates now over a considerable amount of time. I actually don't care what St Helier do with their rates. It's up to them to decide what they do. But don't tell me you've been hard done by because you have not been hard done by. A comment made by my minister, I'm afraid I just can't agree with, to say you sort this nonsense out after. You don't sort the nonsense out after. You sort it out before. You sort it out before. You bring it here, and we haven't done that. So I'm sorry. I wasn't going to speak on this, but there's a lot of issues here. I think there have been a lot of red herrings with this, but we should have had a proposal on the table that made sense, that we understood, and we haven't done that. So I can't support. So I really would like to support the Treasury Minister over this, but I can't. I'm just sorry, but the states need to pay rates, but they need to find it themselves, and don't find some, like I say, some convoluted way of trying to do it. We need to have a package in front of us that we understand, and I'm afraid we just don't have it, so I can't support this.
Any other member wish to speak on Article 17? Deputy Higgins.
Thank you, sir. And I do stand reluctantly. It's funny how things are said in the States which sort of trigger the need for a response. Many people have said this is not a town and country issue, but listening to the debate here this afternoon, I'm sorry, that's what it comes across as. The constables may be saying, oh, we agree with the principles of paying rates, but not as long as it affects us. That's part of it. The other thing, too, is I'm afraid the Constable St Brelard really got me going because he was saying how we've had the benefit of the reclamation area. Well, what's on the reclamation area? We have an incinerator, a very big one. We've always had an incinerator in St Helier. We've been burning or dealing with all the rubbish from all the parishes. We have a centre that is responsible for green waste. We also have the fuel farm, which is used to generate electricity for the whole of the island. So I'm sorry, Constable, we have not had all the benefits. We have a lot of the industrial and other facilities that support the whole of the island. And we would appreciate recognition of that and would appreciate actually receiving some funds towards that. I might also add the state strategic plan is trying to preserve the countryside. We've all voted, I voted in the past too, to keep the island as green as possible, to stop building in your parishes. And we're accepting that St Helier is going to have more and more houses. And I know the Minister isn't here from the Environment Department, but I know he favours going up. We've had discussions about the new hospital, which benefits all the island. And when we had the discussions about whether it should be on the People's Park, there was a great deal of opposition in St Helier because it would be taking away one of the few green lungs that we've actually got within the parish. Although we were being promised, yes, when the site was cleared, we'd get another park back. I'm sorry, look at the Millennium Park, how long that took, and how hard fought that was. So I'm sorry, that's why we opposed that. So what I would say is, I would hope that the constables will support this. I know that they've got major reservations about it, but the St Helier deputies have supported the country parishes with trying to prevent over-exploitation of the parishes, so you've got your lovely green fields and so on. So I'm sorry, I hate to make some of those comments, but they do need to be made. I shall obviously be supporting this proposition because I think it's long overdue that St Helier should get some assistance with the cost of all the state's buildings within St Helier. Thank you.
Does any other member wish to speak on Article 17? Call on the Minister to respond.
Came to a sudden conclusion, sir. I was expecting it to probably go on a little bit longer, although it has already been quite a long debate. I understand, sir, the difficulties with this matter, and in a sense the divisive nature of it. It's splitting the Assembly, which is never a good position to be in. It's never a good position to be in, sir, when the constables feel so strongly about a particular matter and are so united on it, as it appears is the case at the moment. So I think, as the Constable of St Helier has already said, this matter has been on the agenda, if I can put it that way, for a considerable period of time. And even more recently, since the strategic plan debate, when the Assembly voted overwhelmingly to ask the Council of Ministers to progress this matter, since that period there has been, and this has been a point raised by some members, there has been consultation, and there has been some consultation as well, as one would expect, with the constables. In fact, I went to the country to have an opportunity to meet with constables, although there were a number who were unavailable to make that meeting. I went to St Martin's and we talked through the issues of this proposal. I also had a further meeting with the constables arranged here in the State's buildings, together with officers, to do exactly the same. It was fair to say that the constables, for reasons they've, and I won't repeat them, gone through today, were not satisfied or overly satisfied with the direction of travel that was being proposed. But it's a very difficult position, sir, to reach consensus on such matters. And I had in mind that I had to progress the will of the states in terms of bringing this forward. And that's why this particular article is being debated today. So there have been, as others have said, some red herrings in this debate. The issue about roads, which has caused the Solicitor General to scratch his head on more than one occasion, is not an easy one. But I think it's probably fair to say that although there are some legal issues around definitions and such like, from the perspective of rateable value, the roads are actually rated at nil. They aren't rated as such. So from a financial perspective, it's not, as I understand it, a direct issue, and perhaps not the issue that was made out to be, although there may be some matters that need clarification in due course with regard to that particular point. So the Constable of St John's made some disparaging comments, but he was also raising points about the amount raised from the island-wide rate. It's actually fixed in the rates law, and asking the parishes to pay the island-wide rate does not result in an additional revenue for the states. It actually reduces the island-wide rate payable by everyone else in the island. Sir, the sum of money which has been clearly published as part of these proposals in terms of the cost to the states of paying rates is in the region of £900,000. And it is correct to say, and I think one or two members have mentioned this, that there is no firm funding source that's been agreed yet as to how that will be funded. There are some options. The Council of Ministers has indicated that the preferred route is to increase the non-domestic island-wide rate to meet that cost. That would be the preferred route. There are some other options which are under consideration. The idea was clearly stated in that regard within the medium-term financial plan addition, so that won't come as any shock to anyone. But the Council of Ministers also recognised that it wouldn't be fair to increase the revenue raised from the non-domestic island-wide rates until such time as a revaluation mechanism had been agreed. And of course members are aware that that was something that was approved under Article 16 earlier on today. So it's worth perhaps pausing and reflecting on what the state's paying the £900,000 of parish rates actually means for those that are perhaps the most relevant, and that would be the ratepayers. As the amount that is raised from the parish rates is fixed by the parish assembly, the introduction of a new substantial ratepayer, in other words the states, in each parish effectively means a rates cut for all existing parishioners, including those parishioners in the country parishes. That's because the states are going to start paying a proportion of their parish rates for them. We have heard that the states did not agree in the strategic plan debate that the parish should start paying the island-wide rate on their property portfolios, and that, is perfectly correct. But from a matter of principle and a matter of fairness, shouldn't the parishes also understand the cost of ownership of their property portfolio in the same way as the states is being asked to do? This inequality of treatment between the states and parishes appears the right thing to do. The removal of the exemption currently enjoyed by the parishes will create a liability to island-wide rate for the parishes on their property portfolios. Just like the states, the parishes have, of course, two broad choices as to how they meet the liability. They either find savings elsewhere, or they pass the cost, as many have mentioned, on to parishioners through an increase in the parish rates. That will be a decision, of course, for each parish to make in the forum of the parish assembly. Until all parish properties, however, across the island have been assessed by the rates assessors, no parish can say that the increase per parishioner caused by requiring the parishes to pay the island-wide rate on their properties will be greater than the rates cut enjoyed by parishioners due to the fact that the state start to pay some of their parish rates for them. On the basis that the state's property dwarfs property owned by the parishes, and that the parishes are known to run highly efficient and lean administrations, the clear expectation is that most ratepayers across the island will have a lower rate bill at the end of the process. Sir, as I said when I first stood, I understand the difficulties of this. I find it difficult that we have a position of discord across sections of the state. I find it uncomfortable that we have that, particularly with the constables, who I have the highest regard for. But I also have a feeling that it was incumbent upon me, and it was incumbent upon the Council of Ministers to bring this proposition in the way that it's been brought. It was also right to bring this to a conclusion and to have a vote on the matter. I know some members have asked for this to be withdrawn, and I can understand why some feel that way. But I do feel, under the obligations that have been laid, it is right that we have a decision, and it's right that members have an opportunity democratically to vote on this. Sir, I therefore ask members to support Article 17, and I ask for the appel.
Appel is called for. I'd like members to return to their seats. Members have had the opportunity of returning to their seats. Ask the greffier to open the voting. If all members have had the opportunity of casting their votes, I ask the greffier to close the voting. The article is rejected. 17 votes pour, 20 votes contre, no abstentions.
Both ways, sir, please. Read out.
Those voting for, Senators Osoph McLean, Farman, Balash, Green, the Connotab of St Helier, Deputies Martin, Southern, Hilton, Trinity, Higgins, Pinal, Bryan, St Peter, Mnezik, Andrew Lewis and Labby, and those voting contre, Senator Ferguson and the Connotabs of St Clement, St Lawrence, St Mary, St Juan, St Brallard, St Martin, St Saviour, Grouville, St John and Trinity, Deputy Kevin Lewis, and Deputy of St John, Masson, St Juan, Bree, Norton, MacDonald, St Mary and Truscott.
Well, that now brings us to the next articles for you to propose. I think you would suggest you were going to do 18 to 20 en bloc, Minister.
Yes, sir, and I'm rather hoping this will be less contentious. Articles 18 to 20 increases the rate of stamp duty and land transaction tax in respect of residential property on any consideration in excess of £3 million from 7% to 8%, and introduces a new band in respect of residential property where the consideration is in excess of £6 million when the charge increases to 9%. So I propose Articles 18 to 20.
Are Articles 18 to 20 seconded? Yes. Does any member wish to speak on Articles 18 to 20? All members in favour of adopting Articles 18 to 20 in second reading kindly show. Those articles are adopted. Now Articles 21 and 22, is it, Mr.
Sir, yes, I'll take them
sorry, if I
separately.
interrupt, perhaps I should also remind members that Article 22 obviously comes in an amended form, which should be on the should have been distributed to members following Deputy Labby's successful amendment.
Yeah. Sir, actually, I was going to take them separately for that reason. If that's okay, I will take Article 21, which provides for the interpretation of Part 4 of the Finance Law. Part 4 relates to the Customs and Excise Law, which contains the AMPO rules. I propose Article 21, sir.
Is Article 21 seconded? Does any member wish to speak on Article 21? All members in favour of adopting Article 21 kindly show. Those against? Article 21 is adopted.
Thank you, sir. Article 22 is, as you rightly say, amended to give effect to Deputy Russell Labby's amendment to AMPO duties on alcohol applicable from the 1st of January 2017. After taking into account GST, the increases in duty equate to as follows. Members should have these details, but for clarity, 22 pence on a litre of spirits, 2 pence on a bottle of wine, and 1 pence on a pint of standard beer or cider. So I propose Article 22 as amended.
Is Article 22 seconded? Does any member wish to speak on Article 22? Those members in favour of adopting Article 22 kindly show. Those against? Article 22 is adopted. 23 to 27, I believe.
23 to 27 would be fine, sir, thank you. Articles 23 to 26 set the remaining imposed duties on tobacco, fuel and vehicle emission duty from the 1st of January 2017. And so Article 27 is the citation and outlines when the various articles within the finance law actually come into force. I therefore, sir, propose Articles 23 to 27.
On Articles 23 to 27 seconded. Does any member wish to speak on Articles 23 to 27? All members in favour of adopting those articles kindly show. Those against? Articles 23 to 27 are adopted. How do you wish to deal with the matter in third reading?
Sir.
You propose the matter in third reading?
Yes.
Is it seconded in third reading? Does any member wish to speak on this law in third reading? All members in favour of adopting the draft Finance 2017 budget? Appel is called for. Invite members to return to their seats. I ask the referee to open the voting. Members have had the opportunity of casting their votes. I ask the referee to close the voting. The law is adopted in third reading. 32 votes pour, 2 votes contre, no abstentions.
We have the two.
Indeed.
Those voting pour, Senator McLean, Farnham, Balash, Green and Ferguson. The Connotabs of St Peter, St Mary, St Wannes, St Martin, St Saviour, Grouville, St John and Trinity. Deputies Martin, Hilton, Trinity, Kevin Lewis, Knoll, St John, Massog, Pinnell, St Martin, Bryan, St Peter, Lewis, St Wan, Labby, Bree, Norton, MacDonald, St Mary and Truscott. Those voting contre, Deputy Higgins and Deputy Mezek.
Sorry, I just didn't hear a vote for Deputy Southern. Did I miss something?
No, we didn't vote.
So before we move on, I know if the Chief Minister were here, he would want to offer his thanks to the Treasury Minister. Oh, sorry, I thought...
There, in accordance with Standing Order 80A5, there is an act operatoire which will bring the draft Finance 2017 Budget Jersey Law into immediate effect, and I ask the referee to read the citation.
Act declaring that the Finance 2017 Budget Jersey Law 2000 shall have immediate effect. The states, in pursuance of Article 15 of the Public Finances Jersey Law 2005, have made the following act.
Minister.
Sir, I move the act.
Is the act seconded? Yes, sir. All members in favour of adopting the act operatoire kindly show. Those against? The act is adopted. Yes, Senator Green, you have something.
Sir, if I may, just before the Senator, I just wanted to take this opportunity, sir, to thank, first and foremost, the Treasury staff who have worked endlessly. Members will be aware some are outside, but there are many more back at the Treasury. And as I've said, they've worked and put incredible amounts of time into this budget and all the rest of the work this year, but specifically in recent times in the budget. So I'd like to thank them. I'd like to also thank, sir, if I may, the Chief Minister for his support and other ministers in bringing these proposals forward to the Assembly. And finally, sir, I'd like to thank members for their support in this debate that we've had over the last couple of days. It's been, as it always is, a very challenging time in some respects, but it's also been very valuable. Even the most difficult part, which was the recent article that we had a discussion on, and as I said at the time, it was in some respects a little bit divisive, but I do feel that it's important that these matters are brought to a conclusion, which is why I was keen that we had a vote, despite the fact it was tempting to withdraw it, and I thank members for that.
Sir, and I know it's a bit premature earlier, but I know if the Chief Minister were here, he would want to add his thanks to the Treasury Minister, because these budgets don't come together in 5 minutes, so thank you to the Treasury Minister and the Treasurer and the staff. And my thanks to the Treasurer and the staff, also ministerial colleagues. But I'd also like to thank members that brought amendments, because I know as a backbencher bringing an amendment is a lot of hard work, and I think the debate has been better for that. Generally, it's been a good-natured debate. Perhaps the last one was a bit difficult, sir, but I think we've got a good outcome as a result of that debate and working together. So thank all.
Sir, I'm sorry to stand again so soon, but it was very remiss of me when I was issuing thanks a moment ago. I didn't thank my Assistant Minister for all the effort and time he's also put in, which is invaluable. Down a moment ago to passing notes at appropriate times. He's been a great support, and I value greatly his wise counsel. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Well. Senator Rose, do you want to make your statement now? No, not yet. Has it been circulated? We'll do it after the next piece of legislation if you circulate that now. Thank you. The next item is the draft taxation implementation, international tax compliance, country-by-country reporting, the EPS, Jersey regulations, P111 of 2016, lodged by the Minister for External Relations. I ask the greffier to read the citation.
So I wondered before the greffier reads that whether I might be permitted to take first, because it logically comes before the implementation regulations, the ratification of the multilateral competent authority agreement, which is Projet 119.
Yes, yes, very well. Please do take that first. The item then next before the Assembly is the ratification of the multilateral competent authority agreement on the exchange of country-by-country reports, P119 of 2016, lodged by the Minister for External Relations, and I ask the greffier to read the proposition.
The states are asked to decide whether they are of opinion to ratify the multilateral competent authority agreement on the exchange of country-by-country reports signed at Paris on 21st of October 2016 under the aegis of the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD.
Minister.
So on the 16th of June this year, the island became an OECD base erosion and profit shifting, BEPS is the acronym, associate, and a member of the BEPS inclusive framework. The aim of the BEPS project is to reach a globally fair and modern international tax system, and at the end of October, the membership of the inclusive framework stands at 85 countries and territories. All the associates are committed to implementation of the BEPS package, including its 4 minimum standards. The Multilateral Competent Authority Agreement is the instrument that provides for exchange of information on the activities of multinational companies, and the draft regulations, to which we shall come in a moment, provide for the automatic exchange of information with jurisdictions that have signed this agreement. So on the 21st of October, the Chief Minister signed the agreement in Paris, and together with the Chief Ministers of Guernsey and the Isle of Man. It's an important step in maintaining the transparency of which the island is proud in relation to financial services matters, and the agreement is now being presented to the states for ratification, following which it will be published and entered on the official record. The agreement will enter into force with the making of the taxation regulations, to which the Assembly will come in a moment, provided that the agreement has been ratified. So I move the proposition, and I'm happy to answer any questions members might have.
Proposition seconded.
Yes, sir.
Does any member wish to speak? All those in favour of adopting the proposition kindly show. Those against, the proposition is adopted. We now come to the draft taxation implementation, international tax compliance, country by country reporting, BEPS Jersey regulations lodged by the Minister for External Relations, and ask the greffier to read the citation of the draft.
Draft taxation implementation, international tax compliance, country by country reporting, BEPS, Jersey Regulations 2000, the states in pursuance of Article 2 of the Taxation Implementation Jersey Law 2004, and following the decision of the states taken on the day these regulations are made, to ratify the multilateral competent authority agreement on the exchange of country by country reports, have made the following regulations.
Propose the principles, Minister.
So the regulations are the next step towards Jersey's commitment to implement the BEPS project. And perhaps I could just add in relation to the BEPS project that it is a project which is designed to prevent tax planning strategies by multinational companies in particular that exploit gaps and mismatches in tax rules so as to shift profits from one jurisdiction to another with a view to paying little or no tax. And members will be aware that there have been notorious examples of some large companies shifting profits to jurisdictions where tax is very low and as a result paying very little tax in the jurisdictions where the business actually takes place. As a matter of fact, Jersey is home to very few multinational companies engaging in this kind of activity, if indeed any. But nonetheless, it is important that the island should show itself willing to comply with what is an emerging international standard in this respect. I indicated that the Chief Minister signed the agreement in Paris a few months ago, and the regulations are designed to give legal effect to that international agreement. I move the principles of the regulations.
Seconded. Yes, sir. Does any member wish to speak on the principles? Those in favour of adopting the principles kindly show. Those against, the principles are adopted. Wish to propose the regulations en bloc?
If I may, sir, propose the regulations en bloc.
I'm sorry, Minister. In the urgency to reach 5:30 in good time, I forgot to ask the chairman of the scrutiny panel, Deputy Breed, do your panel wish to scrutinise?
No, sir, we do not.
So the regulations, I hesitate to say that they are straightforward, but they give effect to the obligations which will apply to multinational entities, if there are any, which are in Jersey and which will impose requirements for the provision of information to the authority, which will then be passed on to the appropriate jurisdictions. And I move the regulations in second reading, and I'm happy to answer any questions members might have.
Seconded. Does any member wish to speak on the regulations? Deputy Sullivan.
Yes, sir. I just heard the Minister say there are very few multinationals, if any, in Jersey shifting profits. I wondered where the evidence base for that statement is.
That should have been a question put during the principles, Deputy, because we're now talking about the detail of the regulations. Which particular regulation does it refer to? Yeah, I'm sure we can all do that. Does any other member wish to speak? Minister, do you... Senator Ferguson.
Yes, thank you. In view of our prolonged discussions about taxation earlier today, does this mean that companies which trade here but do not, but are either subsidiaries or branches of foreign companies will actually have to report their profits to the Comptroller of Tax?
Which regulation are you referring to, Senator?
Yes, sir. When we talk about country-to-country reports,
I see.
You know,
A clarification on
filing of
regulation
reports.
2.
Yes.
I see, thank you. Does any other member wish to
Clarification
speak? Senator.
So I know that your already patience has been tested because these can't remarks, but as there has been 2 specific questions, perhaps it may be of assistance just to say a very, very brief word that the BEPS initiative will indeed deal with a number of questions that have been raised by members during the course of the budget debate, and the question that raised by Deputy Southern is that at long last there will be rules that will be set which will actually understand and multilaterally agree what the definition of profit is in an economy. And that may lead in future to a world in which we do not have to have the kind of approach to tax neutrality which we have, because we will have effectively international rules and setting a corporate tax rate that will deal with that. This is a long road ahead, sir. It is right that the island has signed up to these agreements, but the outcome in the very longer term will mean for a better and clearer world, and certainly a world in which Jersey is stronger.
Any other member wish to speak? I'll call on the Minister to reply.
So in answer to Deputy Southern, I can only say that that is the information that I have received from the tax authorities, and I've taken that at face value. I'm not aware personally of any evidence upon which I can rely. It's information which I have been given and which I understand to be accurate. So far as the question from Senator Ferguson is concerned, a Jersey entity, a Jersey branch or subsidiary will have an obligation if it falls within the meaning set out in Regulation 3 of the regulations. But if a company is operating in a number of different jurisdictions, it will have an obligation to notify the authorities which of those jurisdictions it is intending to impose the obligation upon to make the report in relation to its profits, so that it's not intended that companies should have obligations in myriad different jurisdictions, but they should have an obligation to identify a particular jurisdiction, and in that jurisdiction there would be an obligation to report the totality of the profits. I maintain the regulations in second reading.
All those members in favour of adopting the regulations kindly show. Those against, the regulations are adopted. You propose them in third reading?
I move the regulations in third reading, sir.
Seconded? Any member wish to speak? Third reading? All those in favour of adopting the regulations in third reading kindly show. Those against, the regulations are adopted. We now come to the Jersey Police Complaints Authority appointment of members, P118, lodged by the Minister for Home Affairs, and I ask the greffier to read the proposition.
The States are asked to decide whether they are of opinion, in accordance with Article 2 of and the Schedule 2, the Police Complaints and Discipline Jersey Law 1999, to appoint the following persons as members of the Jersey Police Complaints Authority for a period of 3 years, commencing on 1st January 2017. Mrs. Rachel Catchpole, Mr. Matthew Swan.
Minister.
Thank you, sir. Sir, before I formally recommend to the Assembly the appointments to the JPCA, I would like to correct a slight oversight in the proposition which is before members. I think it's important to inform the Assembly before we vote on the proposition that one of the 4 JPCA members listed as having been appointed on the 10th of March in 2015 for 3 years, has actually since resigned from the authority. As a consequence, the proposition should state that following the appointment of Howard Cooper as chairman with effect from the 1st of January, this would leave 5 members of the authority still in office. This is an unintentional administrative oversight by my department, and I hope that members will accept our apologies for the error. I hope members will agree, however, that this does not substantially alter the purpose of the proposition, which is to propose 2 new members, Mrs. Rachel Catchpole and Mr. Matthew Swan, as to the Jersey Police Complaints Authority, effective from the 1st of January. The appointment of these 2 new members would ensure that JPCA remains compliant with the Police Complaints and Discipline Jersey Law of 1999, which requires that the authority consists of not less than 6 or more than 8 members. The recruitment process, which led to Mrs. Catchpole and Mr. Swan being recommended for appointment, was undertaken in parallel with the recruitment for a new chairman. These recommended appointments have therefore been approved by the Jersey Appointments Commission. The proposition before members includes short biographies of the candidates, both of whom I believe are well qualified for the roles. I very much hope that the Assembly will support the appointments, and I ask members to vote in favour of the proposition.
Proposition seconded. Any member wish to speak? Those members in favour of adopting the proposition kindly show. Those against, the proposition is adopted. Chairman, do you wish to deal with the arrangements for business now, or is that... I'm sorry, Senator Joseph, I've just been informed there's a statement you are to make.
So I have a very brief statement, and I hope members will forgive the brevity of it and the fact that I can't be more complete on it. But I promised members that I would get back to them before the end of the year with an update on television licences and the relationship with the BBC. So I can inform the Assembly that officers this week have successfully completed negotiations with the BBC with what I am able to say is a positive outcome. Officers are in contact with the BBC to arrange a final sign-off with the Deputy Director General, who is in charge of all financial matters for the BBC, before the end of the week. And as soon as this sign-off has been received, I will be writing to members, whilst not when the States is sitting, informing them of exactly the terms of the agreement. I'm sorry that I can't be more specific, but I hope that this short statement is able, members are able to read into it what they will, and to not be too hard with me on the questions which I am not able to ask, but of course stand ready to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for the Minister? Senator Farmer.
Well, it was just to, I'm sure, I would like to start by congratulating Senator Joseph and thanking him and his officers for this very good work. And I'm sure he hasn't forgotten to mention Deputy Norton, who has been helpful and instrumental in this as well. Does he not agree, sir? Thank you.
Are there any questions for the Minister? Very well. Chairman.
Sir, yes, sir. Do you want me to respond? Was that a question?
Well, I didn't think that was a question.
But I was going to say, okay.
Very well. If you
So I do actually, yes, that does give me an opportunity to, in fact, to thank the officers and to say I agree with Senator Farnham that yes, officers have worked hard, and I do take this opportunity of thanking Deputy Norton, who has been extremely helpful with officials in bringing this matter to a conclusion, and I'm looking forward to emailing members just as soon as I can with the outcome. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. The proposal for the arrangement of public business is as per the consolidated order paper, and I would suggest that the sitting on the January the 17th is likely to take 2 days, sir.
Thank you. Senator Joseph.
Thank you, sir. Sir, you have asked me to rise in the absence of the Father of the House, Senator Rucher, who is with 2 other members of the Assembly attending a Commonwealth Parliamentary conference in London where I saw him, and I know that he would normally wish to be addressing and offering on behalf of the senatorial benches expressions of seasonal goodwill. There is, in fact, a senator who is served longer than me in this assembly, and that is Senator Balash, who in fact joined this assembly in 1972, but apparently in the pecking order, because of the way that the pecking order goes, you call me sir.
He's a very young senator.
Pardon?
He's a very young senator.
He's a very young senator, yes, but he's been here since 1972, and I just wanted to take that opportunity of saying that. So it does fall to me as the second, technically most senior senator, to offer the Assembly and our colleagues and other people on behalf of the senatorial benches seasonal goodwill. We have, of course, welcomed back a senator, Senator Ferguson, to the senatorial benches, and it seems almost as though the period of time that she was not here didn't exist, because she's made her mark as she does, and we, of course, wish the departing senator our good wishes as well. I know that I can speak with confidence on behalf of all my senatorial colleagues when I say that it is an honour and has been an honour to serve this Assembly and this great island over the last year. It has been a year in which there has been an incredibly changing world around us. It's a world in which Jersey, however, continues, as we have demonstrated in this debate today, to be a bastion of stability and certainty. So it was on the 14th of October 1066 that the then Duke of Normandy invaded England. The people across the water apparently call it the Battle of Hastings. The Danish ambassador who has visited Jersey tells me that he calls it the First Viking Danish Civil War. I know, sir, this Assembly, and you particularly, like to call it the Norman Jersey invasion of England. And also I have been known to say that we stayed. And as we said farewell to the modern day representative of the Duke of Normandy, His Excellency and Lady McColl, and I am not able to say Christmas greetings to him, and whilst his service to the island has been acknowledged, I do on behalf of senators wish him and Lady McColl our thanks and good wishes in the seasonal way. Their time in Jersey was indeed a golden period. And when he addressed the Assembly in the last sitting, he spoke, of course, with great wisdom. And he complimented a number of people in his address. And he spoke of service. And I spoke of service in the joy of serving as a senator and serving our island and this Assembly. In the remarks of your Deputy Bailiff, when he took the oath of office, he recalled also the word service, when he recalled the words of Speaker Weatherall and the fact that Speaker Weatherall said that he was the servant of this Assembly. And we know that both you and the Deputy Bailiff take your responsibilities in serving us in such an exemplary way, and I will come back to you in a moment. We do thank a number of people for the service that they give. There is a word, sir, called civil servants, and it is not generally a word that I like using, as I find it somewhat pejorative. The senators take this opportunity of thanking, however, to the people who I normally refer to as officials or public sector workers, the hundreds of public sector workers, for the work that they do on the senatorial benches and the other benches of this Assembly's behalf to serve the people of Jersey. It is not easy to be a civil servant, but we take this opportunity of recognising the service and dedication of so many of hundreds of our staff. And I hope members will join us in thanking every single member of civil service. And so a technical problem has just meant that my iPad has just given up, particularly those in the Christmas period. So there may be just a short delay whilst my iPad fires up. There was a couple of other things I was going to say. Hopefully it won't be. That's the problem of an iPad, sir. When you actually run out of power, sometimes you run out of steam. So I was going to go on to say, and I know that it'll come back in a second. Of course, this is the first time that a Christmas greeting is, of course, given when people have an opportunity of not only hearing the remarks of those that are privileged and have the honour to give the Christmas greeting, but also to see us, and in the webcasting. And indeed, we hope that the Chief Minister, who is not here today, we hope he's not watching, sir, or listening, because he is ill, but we do, on behalf of the senatorial benches, thank the Chief Minister for the support that he's given the senators and this Assembly and the island for the hard work and service that he gives this island. I know how much work he does. So we've also welcomed in the last year, of course, a new greffier. And the senators have been impressed at the way that the new greffier has assumed the position of greffier and served us in such an exemplary way. It is almost as though he has been here for more than the few months that he has been or the year he has been. And we take this opportunity of thanking the new greffier for being so quick to adapt into the Jersey way. And we take this opportunity of thanking the deputy greffier particularly for no doubt the enormous support that he has given, she has given him in assuming his position, and also the assistant greffier and the gref staff for the huge amount of support that they give the senators and all members of this Assembly for what they do. So this is apparently the last opportunity that a senator will have to address the Dean, because the news of his departure was announced this morning. And we take this opportunity of thanking the Dean for his service. There will be, of course, other times, but in this Christmas period, of which he is a person closely associated with the principles of Christmas, we wish him in this Christmas time our very best wishes. And we also thank him, sir, on behalf of the Assembly, for the perhaps more informal role that is not known of that as being pastor of this Assembly. He gives many members who have difficulties, many members who have had a bad day, many members who have had a difficulty. He is always there to offer a comforting word and a helpful word and an encouraging word. And we do really thank the Dean for that additional informal role that he plays. It is much appreciated. Sir, this is the first time that I cannot look up and see the Jersey Evening Post in their window, because, of course, their window has been requisitioned by the camera operators who are operating that camera facility. But we do recognise and thank, as is traditional, the members of the media for the interest that they take in the proceedings of this Assembly. Perhaps they are sitting in front of their computer screens at Five Oaks instead of being up in that box up there. But we know that there is another media representative sitting above the senatorial benches who, of course, has been taking a very close interest in this island affairs and this Assembly's deliberations. And we like to complain about the media, but we recognise the important role that they have in holding us to account and in reporting the activities of this Assembly. And we thank the media for what they do, even though sometimes we actually criticise them, but we thank them warmly. So this last year has seen the arrival and departure of a number of distinguished guests and visitors to this jurisdiction. And each of those has without doubt been an enormous pleasure for the senators and other members of this Assembly in the conversations that we have had. And we recognise, as that is the dawn of 2016 ends, we recognise as a senatorial bench that we hope that the island is now enjoying, as a result of that, an improved international reputation. The senators, sir, have enjoyed the Youth Assembly, organised so diligently by the Deputy Greffier in March, and how important that Youth Assembly is for our young people. Senators have enjoyed serving in a number of capacities on the CPA, and of course enjoyed greatly hosting the British Islands and Mediterranean Region Conference in May. We have had, as the senatorial benches, a difficult and sometimes fractious and sometimes challenging year in persuading some of our colleagues in debates. There is, however, one thing that distinguishes this Assembly perhaps from other parliaments. There will be, as we have seen today, some arguments. But there is one thing the cameras don't show, and that is the comradeship that is existing between the members of this assembly outside, in the coffee room and in the places that the cameras don't see. And the senators thank and warmly thank all our colleagues for the friendship that they show each other, and we show each other in times of good times and bad times. We hope, certainly, as far as the constables are concerned, that nobody that made any remarks in the last debate is going to be barred from entry in any of our beloved parishes. But we thank the constables for their service to their communities, and also the service that their municipalities give to the island, which of course is a distinguishing feature of Jersey. To our colleagues, the deputies, we extend our fondest good wishes, despite the fact that one of them has apparently expressed the desire to be abolished in terms of a name. We don't mind that. We don't really mind who's called who, but we certainly recognise the work that the deputies do in terms of representing constituents. That's another work that the deputies do, which is often unseen. And we know as senators, and those of us that have served as senators, just how hard deputies do in serving their individual constituents and how much that means. In terms of comradeship, we know that one deputy has shown incredible courage against the battle of a very serious illness. And that just shows the fortitude of that individual. And I know the affection in which Deputy Rondell is held in this assembly. And whilst temporarily ill today, it has been so great to see him back and on his feet and taking part in this assembly. And whilst we also respect and the privacy of family life, there is, of course, another member of the deputy benches who is definitely in our positive thoughts over this Christmas period. So to you, Sir Bailiff, and Mrs. Balash, we offer our Christmas greetings and our thanks for your service to this assembly and all you do for us. And also for the Deputy Bailiff, for which the way he has conducted himself in presiding over this assembly. We thank Her Majesty's Attorney General and Her Majesty's Solicitor General for the endless advice, sometimes at short notice, and always given as speedily as possible without fear or favour of any rank of standing of minister, backbencher, scrutiny panel, for the advice that they give. We know that they go beyond the call of duty in helping us and coming to good decisions. We thank the Viscount and Deputy Viscount for their presence here, and we also thank the ushers for their endless ability to serve us in passing notes and offering some pretty good advice and some pretty frank talking about what exactly they think about certain issues. But that, of course, always remains entirely confidential. So, on behalf of the senators, we see the dawn of a interesting and difficult 2016. But the senatorial benches look forward to joining back into the Assembly in 2017 and dealing with the challenges ahead. I say, sir, that it is a privilege to serve this Assembly, and all senators will spend hopefully a restful period of time and come back refreshed in terms of having even more energy to deal with the challenges in 2017 and beyond. And I thank everybody for listening to these remarks.
Thank you, sir. I had two speeches. Not sure which one to use. I must say it is very hard going second. The sooner we get rid of the senators, the better, I think, because Senator Joseph has said all that needs to be said. However, and trying to avoid repetition as is required in standing orders, on behalf of my fellow Connétables, I would like to extend our Christmas greetings to you, sir, and to all members of this House. It has been another busy year for the states, with the usual debates about TV licenses, the role of the bailiff, and the states paying rates. But we have at least been spared a no confidence vote in the Council of Ministers, and we've also been spared a debate about Sunday trading, and we've been spared that usual annual proposition attempting to oust the constables. At least we have so far, but I didn't quite have time after the last vote to get it written. A highlight for the constables, sir, was the 90th celebrations of Her Majesty the Queen, and these were done, as you would expect, differently in every parish. In St Helier we celebrated with bunting, showing Her Majesty at 3 stages in her career, which was hanging in the town for much of the summer, rattling very noisily, much to the distress of some people who used town, but at least it made the point that all of us in the island are very grateful to Her Majesty for her headship of the Commonwealth. And in a related point, and it's been mentioned by Senator Ozef, we, of course, were very blessed by the presence of His Excellency the Lieutenant Governor. In St Helier, we enjoyed the last of the 12 Governor's Walks, which are run so capably by Frank Fall, and enabled us to show His Excellency and Lady McCall around parts of St Helier they might not otherwise have reached. And of course, we are not able to their early departure means we cannot give them Christmas wishings, but I know that members do wish them very well in their home in England. As the Senator has mentioned, we have web streaming in the States. He didn't mention, of course, the obvious effect this has had on us. As far as the Madam Constables goes, we've seen a sudden blaze of coloured frocks, which has been so good to see, and the men are more limited and restrained in their reaction to web streaming, have at least started taking more care of their ties. So as has been mentioned, we say goodbye to the Dean in February, and this will be our last chance to include him in our Christmas speech, and also Mrs. Key, and we're grateful to them. He's also, of course, the rector of St Helier, but he gives a great deal of help right across the parishes to all of the rectors of the 12 parishes. And while we're speaking about the churches, let us also extend our Christmas wishes to our leaders of all faiths in the island who provide such a great deal of service to us, whether it's the Catholic community, the Methodist community, the Muslim community, and so on. The voluntary groups have been referred to as well, and I think even more since Sir John's parting speech, and we are very grateful once again to them and all the work they do, particularly from the point of view of the constables, the enormous work carried out by the honorary police in the island. Not only in their very visible role in making many events possible throughout the year, but in that work they do to ensure that our unique system of justice is applied fairly and consistently with many people who would otherwise have criminal records, but are spared that from a few choice words from a connétable at a parish hall inquiry. Finally, sir, we do thank you for the manner in which you have presided over the House. Your door is always open and you're always ready to offer words of advice and guidance when these are required, and even occasionally when they're not. We also thank the Attorney General and the Solicitor General, your families, and Mrs. Balash, and the families of the Crown Officers, the Dean and Mrs. Key, the Deputy Bailiff, the Senators on my right and the Deputies on my left, the Viscount and their staff, the ushers, including the one who retired this year after many years of service, giving his place to our new usher. He must be wondering what on earth he's taken on. To Jan, our tea lady, the press, and the many other people associated with the efficient running of this assembly. We wish you, sir, and everyone a truly peaceful and enjoyable Christmas, and best wishes for 2017.
Deputy Martin.
Yes, thank you, sir. And going third is never a good place to be, especially when, as you said, as the constable has just said, if this was standard order, sir, I would be done for repetition, because there is only so much that the deputies' benches can add to the excellent comments from Senator Osef and the Constable of St Helier. I did think I was going to give out a few gongs, sir, to one for the longest speech, but there was too many contestants. And the other one, sir, was going to be for the speech that had the least relevance to the proposition that we were being debated, and that one definitely had the most contestants, but sadly one of them was myself, so I thought I'd really better not go there when you start looking at Hansard, sir. I did want to give one out, and my friend was over for this particular sit-in, and it was our sit-in on Liberation Day. And she and I, she was up there, was absolutely moved by the speech of the Constable of St Saviour. It was truly a reminiscing of what it was really like, and it really came across in that way. I look up as Senator Osef, and I just want to clear one little thing up, because we do have the cameras in now, but many months before we had the cameras in, Senator Osef was giving us one of his lovely speeches, sir, and he told us he had been, and I thought, sir, he said he had been to the biggest trekking conference in the United States, and I made the trekking welcome sign to him across the chamber. Unfortunately, he said, Deputy Martin is making hand gestures to me, but we didn't have TV then, sir. So I really thought we would clear this up, and that is the international sign of the Star Trek. And I say to you, Senator, it did go over your head, but I also mix my sci-fi app and say, may the force be with you. And, sir, I wasn't here last year because the middle child decided he was never coming back to Jersey and asked me to meet him halfway around the world. And when I met him, he told me he would be back in January, but I still had a nice time. But I couldn't remark on my first year on being on the Jersey Overseas AIDS Commission and how it absolutely opened up my eyes to what the money does, that the generous people of Jersey do, and that how much more work there is out there, the Syrian crisis, the millions of children who don't have clean water. And these are not the adverts where you trot out. These are real stories, and they really, really open my eyes. So it is sort of something to think about. I think in Jersey we talk about some, and it's all relative poverty. I know it's not fair for everybody, but being on this committee, sir, as I say, has just put some other things in total perspective. I would also say, like Senator Osef, and I think the Constable, we are a mixed bunch. We are from all different political persuasions. But I will say, and I include majority, if not all people in here, I can have an argument in here now, or disagree today with the Constable of St John, and other days agree with the Constable of St John, sir. But we can also find ourselves, not just in the coffee room, across one of the nice establishments, licensed establishments across the road. And thank you for many of the constables. We don't have to pay any more for our, or not too much more for our drink, that we can then have a serious conversation as why we didn't agree. But it's never, never, never held personally. So, sir, on behalf of all the deputies, and I would like to wish a sincere Christmas regards to all the senators. I think I need my glasses now, sir. Yes. The constables, to you, sir, and Mrs. Balash, the Deputy Bailiff, the Attorney General, and Her Majesty's Solicitor General, the Dean and Mrs. Key, the Viscount, the Deputy Viscount, the greffiers, and all the State's gref staff who are working in the clerk's offices for scrutiny. Also those in the publications and bookshop who support this assembly immensely, the ushers, Stuart, Paul, Dean, Marios, and of course John, who left earlier this year, and Joan, our tea lady, and all the media. but I know you would all want me to also pass on to everybody living in Jersey all the best wishes for Christmas and a fantastic New Year. Thank you, sir.
Sir, on behalf of those who sit in this chamber by virtue of Her Majesty's appointment, it falls to me for the last time to wish everybody else a very happy Christmas. I want to thank members for finishing this evening, because tomorrow is the second day on the two-day appointment process for a new rector of St John. And tomorrow morning is the preach-off in the church in St Helier. And so I will be listening to two people speak, who will be speaking on exactly the same passage. So there will be some repetition, which will make me feel at home. But we have limitations as to the number of minutes from which we can speak, which may be something we might consider. It is always a joy to spend another year in this wonderful assembly. I think that many people around the world, where when the television cameras are in, you see members of the government or opposition as maybe huddling up behind the poor lone speaker, who appears to be the only person interested enough to be there. And we rightly sit and listen, and we rightly sit and listen to each other. I'm so pleased that all those who've spoken before me, and I have to say to her through you, sir, that 20 years of teaching, preaching in Oxford never led me to say anything to any of my students that would remotely have prepared them for having to follow Deputy Martin in speaking, and that is just such a joy. But it's spoken about being able to agree afterwards, because I thought we might have just a moment of culture. So I turned up my iPad to the Looney Tunes Warner Brothers website. And you may remember the Looney Tunes of Ralph Wolf and Sam Sheepdog, who clocked on religiously at the start of their shift as friends to spend the entire day bashing 7 bells out of each other, and then, or whatever is the parliamentary equivalent, and then clocking off and returning home as best friends. And it seems to me we have seen that so much in the nicest possible way here. But I'm so pleased we've paid tribute to the ushers, because from where I sit, it's almost impossible to see an usher. But members kindly make signals to him that the Dean has a note. And they very kindly come and tell me some other member wants to speak to me. And one day, just a few months ago, I had one. The governor is waiting for you downstairs, sir. Because I'd missed his eyes trying to catch my attention, and I was about to be late for our regular Tuesday morning coffee break. So when Sir John left, I didn't just lose a governor and a friend, I lost a coffee partner, but also a competitor. You may not have known, but some of us have a little competition in the appointed members as to socks we wear on States Days. We try to be slightly statement-like. Yesterday it was pink and black hoops. Today it's London buses. But something just to lift the thought. I'm glad, sir, that with you and your deputy bailiff, I may have lost my socks competitor, but those who like sushi for lunch very much remain. This is a good moment to thank all members of this assembly for their support and understanding and welcome, and to wish all those with whom I so greatly value my membership of this assembly a very happy Christmas to you and to your families, your wives, your husbands, your partners, your friends. To thank you, sir, personally for your support, without which my job and ministry would be quite impossible. It just remains for me to wish you not simply the happiest Christmas you can have,
but also the blessings and peace of the Christ child whose birth we celebrate.
Well, for those of you who thought it was hard going second, third or fourth, I can assure you that going fifth is I'm very pleased to be back in this southern Channel Island. I've had the opportunity of contributing to the Law of Guernsey the last 3 days, where I've been sitting in the Court of Appeal, and it is a real pleasure to be back. It's been a pleasure to notice for the first time that Senator Ossoff has not only run out of power himself, but caused his Christmas greetings to run out of power. But at all events, Senator Connétable St Helier, Deputy Martin, Mr Dean, I would like to thank you most warmly and sincerely for your kind greetings that you've given to me and to my wife, and to the Deputy Bailiff. I very much appreciate them. Usually at this time of year, I give a report about how hard you've all worked, and I'm sure you'd like me to do the same again. The Assembly met for 34 days during the year, 36 laws and 38 sets of regulations. There have been questions about some of the regulations which come in at the wrong time, as we've heard today, but we've also dealt with 20 private members' propositions. There were more written questions in 2016 than in 2015, and 50 more oral questions. Of course, it's impossible to choose any of the particular debates, but I particularly have enjoyed the Discrimination Law 2013 coming in to include protection against discrimination on the grounds of age, because as the years go by, I find this to be increasingly meaningful. And of course, we've had two very important debates in September when the Mental Health Law was adopted and the Self-Determination Capacity Law also adopted. In November, the Minister of Health had to work very hard on the new hospital, and that, of course, is going to be a major capital project for the island. And the Minister of the Environment has brought into effect measures to protect the bass, which I have to say was never at much risk as far as I was concerned, because I last caught one about 40 years ago. But many important debates and important legislative items, and the increased holding of ministers to account with oral questions. Now, as has been mentioned, we had an unexpected by-election in September following the resignation of Senator Cameron, and as again mentioned, a pleasure to welcome Senator Ferguson back to the Chamber. It's a specially warm welcome, as she contributed not less than 3 times to the Christmas charity appeal at her first meeting in September, when her iPad disrupted the proceedings on 3 occasions. I'm advised by the GREF that the second meeting in September, at which the medium-term financial plan was debated, was actually a most lucrative meeting for the Christmas appeal, coinciding as it did with the inauguration of the web streaming of this assembly, and members frequently forgot to turn off their iPads or put them to mute so that they could watch the performances directly. Although why it was impossible to watch the performance from in here, I'm not quite so sure. But £80 was collected from that meeting alone. So your generosity has been much appreciated. £240 in all has been raised during the year, and in addition to that, very kindly donated by the Connétable St Saviour earlier this week. This will be paid on your behalf to the Christmas appeal. The year has seen a number of internationally significant decisions being taken, and Brexit obviously is one of them. But it does emphasise why the Assembly is absolutely right to be not only inward-looking, considering what goes on in the island, but also outward-looking. And it emphasises how important it is that we do have the visiting foreign dignitaries, which Senator Ossoff has mentioned. We've had the French, Swiss, Estonian and Israeli ambassadors and the High Commissioner from South Africa this year, as well as the President of Normandy, Monsieur Hervé Morin, and the President de la Manche, Senator Philippe Bas. Looking outwards is really important in any small community, and members have attended the CPA meetings. The Deputy Bailiff with the new greffier attended the Commonwealth Speakers and Presiding Officers meeting in Malaysia, and I was able to attend the Commonwealth Magistrates and Judges Association meeting in Guyana. So although we are a small jurisdiction, we do try to play our proper, or from the larger jurisdiction's perspective, maybe too noisy a part in the outside world. And of course, all these things do help to foster mutual understanding. Now, the presiding officer of the Assembly has got to rely very heavily on the clerks to that Assembly, and we are very, very fortunate to have the strong and hard-working team ably led by our new greffier, who came up to speed with his new role extremely quickly and has proposed a number of innovations and efficiencies, not only into the operation of the State's Gref, but also into the Assembly. I was very pleased, Senator, that you mentioned the Jersey Way, which some of you may remember I took up when I was sworn in last year, because it is an expression that is sometimes misunderstood. And when I say that, to me it means doing things with integrity and with competence and with fairness and with compassion, that should sum up, and in my belief does sum up, exactly the way in this Assembly we try to tackle the various problems that we face. And I thank members for the approach which almost invariably is taken in that respect. So thanking the Gref and the Gref staff, they act extremely competently, and I know they will have appreciated the recognition which members have given to them today. And of course, I'm also very pleased to recognise the Viscount and her staff and those who serve outside, and of course the ushers, three of whom are here now. It has been mentioned that we don't have the Governor here personally to wish a happy Christmas, but he was, General Strong McCall and Lady McCall were very much loved by the people of Jersey. They were given a magnificent send-off, and I know they found that to be extremely moving. Just taking up the point of the Battle of Hastings, I have to say that as an Englishman, he found my description of Jersey's conquest of England slightly irritating. But, you know, for all his abilities, he found it was unarguable. So it has been an eventful year, and it's time now for us all to take some well-earned rest. No matter what your personal beliefs are as to the significance of this time of year, the rest is important. I'd like to wish you all, on behalf of the Deputy Bailiff, the Attorney General, Solicitor General, Greffier, Viscount, the Chief Usher, and all members of our teams, to wish you all and to wish your families a very peaceful and relaxing, refreshing Christmas break, and to thank you for your good wishes.
Propose the adjournment, sir.
Adjournment is proposed. And I've now been caught out, as it's obvious I've torn up the agenda from last occasion. What date is it? The State's now stand adjourned until the 17th of January.